What you're about to hear is a discussion about personal experience with cancer. We're not medical professionals, and at no point are we making recommendations for diagnosis, treatment, nor care. All opinions are highly personal as each individual experiences mental and physical side effects of cancer and cancer treatments differently. We're only here to listen, discuss, and break the social taboo of cancer. Okay, guys, so we are here. How long? This has been like a year in the making?
Are we starting?
Yeah, it's just rolling. Way to ruin it.
You're just like casually having a conversation with me.
We're keeping that in here. Just
at least. I think when we sat down and talked, it was at least a year ago.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think we can kind of just jump right into like what it is we're talking about. But you, when did you get your diagnosis?
So early 2020, I think it was February, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. At that point, it was just like diagnosed with a lump. It wasn't really like conclusive, like what it was or the severity, obviously. But yeah, it was like February 2020, right before COVID.
Yeah. So that's what we'll be talking about. And we're here with Avery as well, Desiree's boyfriend, who was her boyfriend throughout this entire process.
I'm the boyfriend.
Fiance now.
I'm the fiance.
Oh my God, how could I forget?
Yeah, actually, I'm not wearing my ring, but
great.
Sorry.
That's how important of a fiance I am. We're fianced, as I've been saying.
Yeah.
So we're going to cover a number of things from like day one of diagnosis or like potential diagnosis to where we are today. So I think what would be really good to understand is that first part of like, how did you even begin to think that you might have cancer, or like what was that process? Like when was the first day of like this new life?
Yeah, it's crazy because I feel like it took a long time for the new life part to set in. Because there's just a lot of denial involved. I think it's hard to imagine yourself in like that full force situation until you're like actually in the midst of it. But I think I found it in the shower or like something. Like I think I found it myself, but I just didn't really think that it was anything because I don't know, boobs are weird and like they change all the time with periods and like whatever. So I just kind of like ignored it. I think I mentioned it to Avery, but I wasn't worried that it was anything.
What did it feel like?
It was like a hard, like lump, but it was kind of weird because it wasn't like just like, it wasn't like a ball like sticking out or something. It was just like very inside, and it was kind of like a long thing. So it was kind of hard to tell. It wasn't clearly like a tumor, you know what I mean?
But it was hard in like a different way.
Well, that's your experience, because I think it was you that was like, I think this is weird. Like you're the one that kind of prompted it that.
Well, you found it in the shower, and then either a day later or it might have even been that night, you said like, can you feel this? Which I said, yeah. And when you had to like place my hand on it to find it, because it was sort of like closer to your ribs, like your chest plate. And then what was weird about it to me, what struck me as strange, is that it just like didn't move. Like it was just fixed and it was there and it was like hard. Yeah. And like, whereas I don't know, it just, because of how fixed it was to your breastplate and like in that area, that was what was strange to me. And it was considerably big. Like
it was big.
At that point, like it was kind of like touching a golf ball, like half of a golf ball almost, or like an oddly shaped golf ball.
It was big, yeah.
Yeah.
But you were definitely more concerned than me. And I think you like touch my boobs more than me. So
yeah, I do. For the record, I do.
Yeah. So I think you were just more like, and I'm also just the kind of person to be like, I don't want to think about this. Like, let's just do something else. Let's talk about something else. And you were a little bit more like, you should like go to the doctor.
How infuriating was that, Avery?
Which part?
The part of her being like, I don't want to think about that.
Well, as we get deeper into the story, that was definitely like it wasn't even a tension. It was just that like, I'm someone who, if there's anything, it's just the way I am. If there's anything wrong, I have to instantly fix it. Like I won't sit on it. And it was really annoying for me because like, I was like, go get this taken care of tomorrow. And the urgency for me was just that I grew up around a lot of health things. Like my sister was a type 1 diabetic early. My grandfather went through a lot of health situations, and like I always had it in me. Like you just take care of it right away. You don't wait. Time is not your friend in those scenarios.
But I think there's also an element of like not wanting to know, like not wanting to deal with it, you know, so.
Yeah, but it was a key polar opposite for us.
Yeah.
Where I was just like, go and get this looked at. And it's not like, I can't force you to do it. It's not my body. So, but yeah, you did, but we were in this transition, right? Of we were settled at this point in Toronto, but like when you move, you uproot all your doctors, right? And everything. And you were still.
Well, I had a doctor, but she was not a very good doctor.
And just like, sorry, just for context,
Yeah.
you guys had moved from Winnipeg to Toronto.
Yeah.
And when is it that you moved again?
2016. So we'd been in Toronto for like 4 years
Mhm.
at this
Mhm.
point. But I think I'd only had a doctor for probably a year.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's hard to find when you move to a big
Yeah.
city. Like you don't know like where you get we just Googled. Like
Yeah.
you know, and like you call someone and say, oh no, we're not accepting new patients. Like
I hear that a lot, that it's really hard to get. I mean, I don't really have a family doctor, but I think every time you try to get one, they're like, we're not taking patients. Down
Yeah.
to like the street that I was living on, they had a huge banner that said, there was like a photo of a doctor and it said their name and it was like, they're accepting patients. And I was
Yeah.
like, this feels really weird that this is how we get doctors.
even our like current family doctor, like everyone in my house, because we have 2 roommates, go to the same doctor. And she recently just dropped a bunch of patients. So like our roommate got like a call being like, oh, by the way, like, sorry, you're no longer a patient.
you've been dumped.
Yeah. I was like,
Yeah.
well, they can't dump me.
Yeah, but it is important to have a family doctor for this
Yeah.
reason, because like we didn't have like a strong person in our corner,
Right.
and
Though,
like
yeah. I think it's hard to find a good one though, because even now I don't really think that we would have that. But
yeah, but like the doctor you had in Winnipeg, right, was like
Yeah,
with
great.
you since a child, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know, there's just this feeling that someone's gonna hold your hand medically through this when you have that doctor. And anyways, you had a doctor, you went and asked for like
How long
So-
did it take you to start like addressing this?
So I made a doctor's appointment. I definitely wasn't rushing anything because I wasn't that worried, honestly. And I think I just didn't want to think about it. So I went to the doctor probably after like a couple weeks. And then I showed her and she said, oh, it's definitely nothing, but like I'll give you, I think she might have given me a requisition. I'm not sure.
She did.
A requisition is like basically to go get a scan. So they have to like give you, like they basically make the appointment for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, or they give you like they give you a paper basically saying that you can have this appointment, but then you have to call and like book and make the appointment yourself.
Okay.
So,
which is also an interesting gap here,
yeah.
that the emphasis is on the patient to go and book their scan, which is not.
You have to be very in control of all your stuff, which I didn't know.
Yeah, and
going into it.
that was a contributing factor also for the delay of figuring this out, because it's like, oh, great, you're super busy, doing your thing. Now you got to add this on top of it, versus just someone saying, we'll get you in for a scan. This, even though we think this is nothing, let us take care of it. So that was sort of odd.
For sure. And also, like, Des, you're not a medical professional.
No.
So even just, like, the thought of having to make an appointment sometimes is, like, daunting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
So I can see that.
Yeah, and it's not clear. It's like they give you a sheet with, like, I don't even think it had, like, phone numbers or locations on it. I had to, like, I remember trying to find where to go to, like, do it, and I couldn't figure it out, that we're forward tracking a little bit, but I ended up in the medical system in Mississauga because I like didn't know that I could get a scan in Toronto, which is like maybe stupid on my part, but like I called someone and they said like if you're trying to get a scan in Toronto, it's going to take you like months, but I can send you to Mississauga and you'll get it in like a week.
And so you got your medical scan in Mississauga, because I'd love to know like what that means for like the rest of your process, but like
so this was doctor number 1. She sent you to
Well, I got a requisition.
Okay.
I didn't go.
For an ultrasound, though.
For an ultrasound. I didn't go because I wanted to switch doctors. So I switched doctors, showed my new doctor, and then she gave me another requisition. She had a similar kind of like response, but she was a little bit more like, go get checked out. So I think because of her urgency, like I booked it. And yeah, so I ended up in Mississauga and I did the ultrasound. And yeah, I'd never had an ultrasound before. It's not comfortable. They like smash your boob with that thing. It really hurts. And yeah, from that appointment.
The ultrasound is the one where they put like a cool gel and then they like roll something on you.
Yeah, it's like a big TV
it's like a
remote
wand
type thing.
Yeah, exactly. Just like squish it down.
Did it hurt?
Yeah. Yeah, it did. Not like terrible. I mean, yeah, it's very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember going to that appointment, and one thing that I thought was like endearing was because it's all very clinical, right? And cold. And I went into the ultrasound room and like lied down on the bed, and I looked up and there was like someone put like a sticker of like a bird like right above where you're like looking, and I was like, oh, that's like really cute that someone would think to do that, you know. So it made me feel a little bit better. And then I was like, they should paint murals or something on the ceiling to like make it a little bit more like vibrant. Like, wouldn't that be nice? But anyways, I feel like, and I don't know if this was in my head, but I feel like I got a vibe from that appointment that like something was weird. Like the ultrasound technician can't tell you anything. They wait for your doctor. But I just like got a vibe. I think I came home and like told you that.
You did, yeah. Because now at this point it was maybe a couple months.
Yeah, like, there was a lot of things in between. Like there was
to get the new doctor.
We were really busy with work, and
totally.
It was Christmas. So I think by the time I actually got I think I was going to these doctor's appointments in like October. And then by the time I actually had the appointment, I think it was January. So
the ultrasound was like in January?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how long did it take to get results?
Well, from that, they were like, okay, there's something weird, but they didn't tell me anything. They were just like, we kind of have conclusive results, so we want you to go get a mammogram. So then I had to get a mammogram. Haven't had a mammogram before. Also extremely uncomfortable, worse than an ultrasound.
What's that like?
So you basically it's standing. You're standing, and you like put your boob on like a plate, which is already weird. Like, you know, if you don't have huge boobs, like that's hard to do. And then you basically like this machine comes and like squishes your boob like as much as possible. So like it literally feels like your boob is gonna like pop open. Like it's terrible.
But so like your boob is on a flat plate that it's supposed to be resting on, and then two more plates squeeze it from the left and right side.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And then there's one that's it flattens it.
Top and bottom.
Top and bottom.
Is it like two separate things, or does it all happen at the same time? Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so you have to do it like 3-4 times.
Oh my God.
Sometimes from different like angles. And then they're basically just taking like pictures of your boob. So I had one mammogram, and then they were like, oh, we don't really know, we need to do it again. So then I had to go for another mammogram. And then one thing that you kind of learn through all of this is that it feels very primitive, if that's the right word, like rudimentary. It feels like we should have better ways of doing all of this, because so often it's like, oh, we didn't get a good result from that test, like we need to do it again. Like that happens so many times, and it sucks. But yeah, so I did 2 mammograms, and then they scheduled me for a biopsy, which was an interesting experience also.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about it.
Okay. So that appointment, I don't think you were with. No, my friend came with me because Avery was working. And at this point, he was coming with me to most of my appointments because COVID hadn't fully taken effect yet. But this one, my friend came, and again, like I had no idea what was involved. I didn't even know what a biopsy was, so I didn't realize that it was just like ripping flesh out of your body. Like I didn't know, like I had no idea what was going to happen. So I went in with like a very naive blindness to everything, which I actually think kind of helped me get through everything because I didn't know what to expect. But I remember walking into the room and just seeing like a table with like a hole in it. And I was like, okay, what is this? Like, what do I have to do? And then the nurse was like, oh yeah, okay, like lie down on the bed and put your boob in the hole. And I was like,
even that is so primitive. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
here's this table.
And I was like, okay. And then so you like lie down in the thing with your boob in the hole. It's already like weird. And then they like, it's like electronic. So they like raise up the bed. And then the doctor comes and like sits under you. So like my boob is like in his face. And then they take like I guess it's like a needle, like a big needle, but it seems like a bigger instrument. Because I didn't actually see it. I only heard what was happening because it was all under me, like with the bed in the way.
Was it the gun?
Yeah, but
like
I think it's like a needle. It's
yeah,
like a spring-loaded...
spring-loaded gun with a big core needle in it that basically shoots in you, grabs a sample, pulls it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you get any sort of like numbing, anything?
Yeah, they numb like the area.
Mm-hmm.
They numb the area, but they don't like... I mean, you're awake. It's not like you're put to sleep or anything. It's just like local anesthesia. So I didn't feel... I don't remember feeling like a lot of pain or anything, which was good. But I just remember the sound because it was like a hole punch, like like a loud, like a gun. And they had to take 5 samples, so they did it 5 times.
So it's literally them poking like 5 holes into your boob and just taking skin out?
Yeah, I think they kind of go into the same hole and then just like move it around and like take different. But yeah, it's like the gun like 5 times. And then, and then I was like, oh, well, that was, like, wild. I just remember thinking that, and then I remember, like, sitting up and just, like, blood, like, pouring out. And the nurse was like, oh, sorry, like, here's more bandages. I was like, this is normal? Like, this seems, like, really crazy. But whatever. So, yeah, that was my first experience with the biopsy. And then I just remember being kind of, like, okay, that was wild. And then leaving. And waiting again. And I think that was the last appointment that I had before finding out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I had anything else.
No. And also, like, when doctors say it's biopsy time, then, like, alarms kind of go off, too.
Yeah.
Because, like, now you know that they're so unsure of what they're seeing that they have to take the next step of, like, something invasive, right?
No, I think I had to do 2.
2 biopsies?
Yeah.
Yeah, you did one after the appointment.
After. Yeah. Okay.
This is why I'm here. I do the timeline. Yeah.
I have a bad memory.
Did that leave a scar, the biopsy gun thing?
It's hard to tell because I have a scar from like the lumpectomy.
It did though at the time.
Did it? Yeah.
Yes, it did because I know.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm assuming because of all the bleeding too.
Yeah. Probably.
And because you got it twice, right?
Yeah.
So after the biopsy, how long did it take for you guys to get any results or like get a call or anything?
Everything then started happening. Like they do book you pretty fast. So I think I had my first ultrasound sometime in January, and then I was at my like follow-up appointment with the doctor on February 4th.
After the biopsy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
it was about a week to 10 days is the biopsy results.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then and then that was like a crazy day because I still didn't even think that anything was wrong, which is kind of crazy.
What was getting results like? Did you get a phone call?
So I think I guess it was probably a phone call that we got just to say like, you have an appointment now with like a doctor, but I didn't know that it was an oncologist. Like I just knew that it was like an appointment. I had no idea what was happening in that appointment. I assumed that I was getting my results at this point, hopefully after all of these tests. But yeah, I still was very like naive to what was going on. Like I didn't fully understand that like, yeah, if you're doing all of these tests, something is probably wrong. I was just kind of like, oh, maybe it's just like a growth, you know? So we went to that appointment. Avery was with me at that one. And yeah, like I didn't really understand that I was in like a breast cancer clinic. To me, it was just like, oh, I'm in a doctor's office, not knowing that I'm literally surrounded by people like waiting to find out, or women waiting to find out that if they have if they have cancer or not. And it's funny because before going into the room to find out and coming out, the experience of that waiting room was like so different. I was so naive to everything before going in, and then after coming out, like I realized that, like, for example, when they gave me my diagnosis, I guess it was kind of a diagnosis, they give you like this blue folder. And I remember coming out of the room and then noticing like all these other people with blue folders. And I was like, oh my God, this means that like they have cancer too. Like that's crazy. So it's kind of like this weird like bonding, but like, I don't know, thing. I could like identify other people or other women like that were going through this. But yeah, so we went into the room and then the oncologist came in and she just started talking like super fast. Like, I don't know, the bedside.
Avery, did you get to be in that room as well?
I did, yeah. I was there for this appointment.
Yeah, Avery was there. So I was sitting on like the bed, the examination like table or whatever, and then Avery was sitting in a chair, and I just remember her coming in talking super fast. I to this day, like I don't remember what she said. I just remember like keywords. I remember like breast cancer, and like she said cancer, I think, like tumor, chemotherapy, like literally all the keywords of cancer. And I was just like
ductal carcinoma,
yeah,
micro invasions. Like
yeah,
you're just getting bombed with all these terms.
Yeah. And I'm just like, I still don't even know what's going on. Like literally all that was going through my head was like, I'm like gonna die. Like that's like what is happening right now. Like that's all I could think of. And then she could tell that I was getting like kind of emotional, and I was like definitely like zoning out from what she was saying. So she was just like, okay, I'm just gonna like give you guys a minute, like I'll be right back. They send in like a counselor type of like person with like your information and stuff. But so she left the room, and then like I don't know, I think you were pretty, I mean, you can talk on your experience, but
I mean, first of all, the week leading up to a biopsy diagnosis is extremely stressful.
I think you were more stressed than me.
I was for sure, because I just had this feeling like that something was wrong, just because of all these steps and how you kept needing more tests. And like we were nervous in the waiting room before we knew, but it was like a funny nervousness, like, oh, it's so funny we're here, and look, everyone around us is like 70, 80 years old. What are we doing here?
I think that's one of the key things of this too, because you guys are like, what are your ages again?
You're 29, right?
I was 29 when I was diagnosed. Yeah.
Right.
I was 28.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it was like, that was the first thing that I noticed, was just like, holy shit, like we are so like young. Like everyone in here is very old. And even the people, like some of the women, it was like, you could tell it was like someone's grandmother who was with their mother. And like, it was very odd. We've stuck out like a sore thumb in there, but you know, we were just nervous waiting to get in. And then by the time we finally got in, I was really agitated and kind of pissed off, because, you know, you're waiting for like an hour and a half for these results. It's not just like, okay, you finally have made it to this final step. We're going to give you this information. It's like, no, you're going to wait in this waiting room for an hour and a half. Then we're going to put you in this smaller room with worse lighting, no landscape photos, nothing to look at. And you're going to be even more nervous, and we're going to make you wait in there for another like half an hour. And then finally, actually what happened was you went to get up to go to the washroom, because we'd been waiting for so long. And you're like, I'm going to go to the washroom. And as soon as you opened the door, she came in. So you were like, caught off guard. You remember that? Yeah. And then, so she like backs her in and is like, don't go anywhere, which was also sort of an alarm thing of her being like, don't go anywhere. You got to stay here for what I'm about to tell you. So then she came in, and she sort of just she had this like intense intelligence to her, where I could tell she just like wasn't going to look at us in the eye. Like she was just going to look down at what she had to say to deliver this news. So she was like, so you've had an ultrasound. We don't have that ultrasound here. I'll make sure to get that. You've had a mammogram and a biopsy. The results of the biopsy were that you have DCIS, ductal carcinoma, with some micro invasions of precancerous cells. What? Like, just that's it. Like she'll
it's like you don't even know how to like decode this, this language when like I'm not familiar at all with like the medical system or medical terms or like, names of illnesses. So like to me that didn't mean anything. I was like, what is that? Like,
and like putting like now I can put myself in her shoes, a couple years later, where it's like, okay, I get it. Like you're doing this every day. You're not going to have bedside manner when you do this. You're probably going to tell 6 or 7 people that day what's going on.
I still take issue with that though, because you're still telling very many people, like other humans, this every day. So I do feel like there should be some level of like humanity at least to the explanation.
And some doctors are better at that than others. That's the thing. It's not like it's impossible. Like,
but think of the reaction that you're going to get from that person too. Like they're obviously
well, it's a lot of heavy emotions to like take in all the time, I'm sure.
So she hits us with this, and once she says like ductal carcinoma, microinvasions, precancerous, like I just kept saying like, does she have cancer?
Yeah, we didn't like we
couldn't get an answer really from her, and she's like, I don't know. We need to do more tests and more biopsies, but what I can tell you is there's a mass. The first biopsy of the mass showed that it wasn't cancerous, that there was just precancerous cells that were spreading from out of the mass towards the nipple in the duct that leads to the nipple. And so that was really confusing for me because I just kept wanting clarity. Like okay,
what does that actually mean?
What does that translate to? Mm-hmm. And she was like, we need to do more tests, but what I can tell you is that because of your age, I'm really concerned, and you need to do genetic testing right away to figure out, what the severity of this might be. And also you definitely should go meet with a plastic surgeon because of the size of the mass, which she said was 4 centimeters long, right?
I think so, yeah.
4 centimeters. Like it's not nothing, right? Mm-hmm. So she's like, there's a 4 centimeter mass that we've observed.
Yes, but how are you supposed to know if that's big or small? Like, what is your point of measurement?
I think she said, and I think she actually said like it was big. It was, the word I remember is like, it's considerably large mass.
Yeah.
And so she was like, regardless, like you're going to need surgery. So,
well, she brought up a mastectomy in that initial conversation. That to me, I think that was what like scared me the most, because I was like, what? Like,
yeah, she just said like, you're going to need surgery. We're going to have to do either a lumpectomy or mastectomy, but she really pushed mastectomy right away.
Yeah, which is for like information. That's like when they remove your entire breast.
Mastectomy is the removal of the whole breast.
A lumpectomy is just taking out the tumor.
Yeah. So she hit us with all that. Desiree kind of went numb, like stunned, and was just like crying, like waterfall crying, like what's wrong with me? And I was just trying to like, I don't know, I was caught between these two places of like, I'm trying to get information, and that's why you should have someone there when you go into an appointment like that. Like for anyone listening, like it's important to bring other people, your partner, a support person, just for the sake of bouncing information and absorbing as much as you can. Because when you got that diagnosis, it was just like the lights were off.
Oh yeah, I had no idea what was going on. I was just like, I can't absorb anything.
But I do remember you absorbed this because she left, and then I went to go hug you, and you just went like shook your fingers and what? Like you like what? And we're just like, cut them off, just cut them off. You were just crying, and you just said, just cut them off. Like they were just like, I don't know, like flower stems.
I was dead. I was like,
yeah.
I'm like, my boobs are just infested. I'm dead. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So she.
Yeah, but that's like at that point too, I was just like willing to do anything. Like I would just like listen to anything that they told me. I had no critical thinking. It was just like.
What's really shocking to me is that the amount of information that you got from not knowing what was happening, like opening a door to an appointment and not knowing, to having to be like, cut my boobs off, was like a matter of minutes. Yeah. And it, like, I don't know how long really was it, like 15, 20 minutes? That 10, appointment? 10? Like,
it was short.
It was like 10 minutes.
I don't know what
maybe could have been shorter, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't know how any human is supposed to be able to like process information that quick. That's what's really like taking me back, because I'm just like 10 minutes from like innocent, not knowing what's going on, to like just cut them off. That seems wild.
Yeah. It is wild, and it's
very overwhelming.
Yeah, there's no filter, and then all of a sudden you've got this bomb dropped on you. You can't even.
Well, I think the worst part is just like not understanding still the severity like really what's going on. It's like you're trying to absorb all this information, but like,
Well, that's what happened when she came back in.
mhm.
Because then she came back in after I was holding her in the cut my boobs off moment. And she was like, oh, also because you're so young, we need to like do an MRI and like a CT scan to understand like what else is going on
If
in your
it's
body.
spread,
Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, fuck. Like, what is going on? Like, you're only thinking about your breast or the lump that they're looking at, and then all of a sudden you're like, holy fuck, like it could be anywhere, it could be everywhere, like, and that is the beginning of your
Yeah.
journey
Yeah, exactly.
in this diagnosis process.
Yeah.
is that
And I think that that's probably similar for like anyone that gets diagnosed with cancer, is that the very first thing is that you're like, how bad is it? Like, is it everywhere? And then you have to wait like at least a week to find out.
longer,
Yeah.
couple weeks.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, because so when you had asked her, does she have cancer? And she was like, I don't know, we have to do more testing.
she didn't say I don't know. She said she has pre-cancerous microinvasions, and that's just what she kept wanting to say to me because that's all she knew. And she was unsure, but she wasn't going to say I don't know. She was just going to say, this is what we've observed, and I can tell you that we know you have, but we need to figure out what else it is.
But there was no clarity on like,
No.
is precancerous actually cancer?
No.
Which
Right.
then becomes even more confusing when she's talking about a mastectomy and
Yes.
extreme
Yeah.
alarm to your
Exactly.
age.
And I'm
Yeah.
sure to them it's very clear because like they're educated in all of this. So to them it's like a clear thing that they're telling you, but when you don't know anything, it's like very confusing.
No, that's a really good point, is that as soon as you get told that you have cancer, you're like, what the fuck is cancer even?
Right.
Like, you're just like, because what is pre-cancer? What do you mean pre-cancer? Is it going to be cancer? When's it going to be cancer? I
Right.
remember asking, like, how long will it take for those invasions to become cancerous? And she looked at me like, fuck off, boyfriend. Like,
So once she left the room, who came back in?
So they send in kind of like a counselor type. I don't know if they're actually like a counselor, but someone that can deal with your emotions better than the doctor.
barely.
Like, yeah, like an assistant or something. And so they just come in and they have the blue folder, and the blue folder has like basically all of your next appointments. So they book those appointments for you. You don't have to book them yourself.
Okay.
So it has like your papers with all of those different appointments, and then it has like, like cancer information booklets. Like I think it had a couple of those in there, or like who to
Yeah.
call, don't kill yourself, like type of booklets. And so my
Just the
appointments,
important information.
Yeah, the don't kill yourself booklet is in there.
but my appointments actually started like that day. So like I had my second biopsy that day. So it was like that afternoon. So that's when we had like a weird window of time to kill in between the finding out and then that second appointment. And we didn't want to stay at the hospital. So we like left and drove to an Egg Smart because it was the only restaurant around.
Well, we were starving. We hadn't ate anything,
Yeah.
right? Because
We like needed to eat. So on the way, I like called one of my friends and told her, because I knew that she would be the most like pragmatic about it. So
Ashley.
yeah, Ashley, I think I just needed to like get it out to like one person. And she was very like good. She's just like, okay, like what's the next steps? She wasn't like overly emotional, which was good. And then we went to the Egg Smart, and we like clearly shouldn't have been like in public. Like we were like very like emotional and just like weird. And we sat at the table, and like the waitress came over, and like it probably was so awkward. Like I don't want to talk to these people. I'm like clearly interrupting something like dramatic. And it was just like also just weird because like you immediately start thinking of like, well, where did this come from? And is the things that I'm going to be doing now making it worse? Like if I eat like chocolate muffin with a bunch of sugar in it right now, is this gonna like make it worse? So like I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what I could eat. I like was just, you kind of feel like you're just like trapped in this like prison. Because you have no idea like, what's causing it and whatever. And like So I think I just ordered like, I don't know, an egg or something. So I was
No,
like, what?
fruit.
Fruit. Yeah. I
You
was
just
like, what's
ordered
the
like
most healthy thing that I can like eat? Um, yeah. And then I don't remember what you ordered.
I don't remember either, but like I think it was just like fruit and like a piece of egg and maybe a bacon.
Yeah, I'm sure you
Like
got an egg.
I like an egg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just wild to think that you have to like immediately know how to function. This is a weird comparison, but I feel this way too when like a mother gives birth and then like the next day they're like, okay, bye, like leave the hospital, take this child. Now you have to understand how to function with a baby.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So in like a less good way,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's like, oh, you have cancer now, like go into the world and figure it out.
Yeah.
And like I wouldn't like, yeah, but that thought of like, what do I eat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
It's
knowing
crazy.
if it's like stage 4 cancer, like, and like, yeah, you just like have no idea. You're just kind of like thrown out there.
How long did you guys have to sit at this Egg Smart?
I
Well,
think we had a couple hours, but
I think we were there for like an hour and a half or
yeah, we
like an
definitely had a
hour.
couple hours to kill.
Yeah, we just like looked at each other and just like cried. Like I
You
wasn't
didn't.
crying yet. I got in and I was trying to be strong. And I remember you love this story, but I remember like we came in, she ordered the fruit cup and I was like, "Okay, I'm going to go to the bathroom." And then I like went to the bathroom and I was like, peeing and I just started crying. Like it just like hit me because it was the first moment that I had alone where I was like trying to be strong and absorb, and then I was just like, so there I was like in an Egg Smart, bawling, holding my dick, and like peeing and crying at the same time, and just it was it hit me. I like looked in a mirror and I was like, whew, whew, like breathing, like, Kate, get a hold of yourself, like, man up. Like the thing you probably shouldn't say, but I was like, man up, like go out there, like be strong, like you gotta be strong for this. But I was terrified because like we were just like now looking at each other as partners, not just as like
Yeah.
we were out of the initial bomb, and we could have a chance to like look at each other and realize what this was going to mean for us as like people and as a couple.
Well, it's definitely the first time in our relationship that we had to like face like something really hard together. So you're also in this unknown of like, are we going to be able to handle it? It's also like a huge thing on your relationship.
Right.
Like,
Wow.
are we gonna make it? How all of the unknowns of things that I'm gonna have to deal with. How is Avery gonna deal with those?
Right.
Well, I was like the opposite. I was just like, we're gonna make it.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, yeah. I never doubted you, but you don't know. And like we went through some things throughout the journey that definitely tested our relationship.
oh, we'll
you
get to
know?
that.
Yeah. So
But I think that it's important to note that you just were told that you have this diagnosis, that your body is like foreign to you now. And you're having to have this thought process of like, how is our relationship gonna, like, how's Avery gonna handle this? How are like other people going to, even like you calling your friend, being like, you have to do the mental gymnastics of like, is she gonna be emotional? And like so many things you're thinking of at the same time.
yeah, I think definitely the hardest thing about that day was telling my parents. Like I didn't want to have that conversation. Like that is like the hard, and I saved it for like the very end of the day because I just wanted to avoid it. And they're the last people I told of like my close friends, because it's just this weird thing where like you can handle things. I think this is true for like most people, is that when something's happening to you, like you can handle it, but putting like bad news onto other people that clearly like love you and care about you, it's like you're like hurting them, even though it's like not your choice to do that. It's still like putting this thing on them that is going to hurt them. So I think that was like a hard thing to deal with.
Did you find support within your parents?
Yeah, definitely. Like they were very like non-emotional in like a good way. Like they were very just like, okay, well, like keep they obviously wanted to know all the information that I had. And more just like, okay, well, like make sure that you communicate with us like what's going on throughout the process, but they weren't like breaking down on the phone, which I think was
Right.
helpful, to me, for sure. I don't know what happened when they hung up, but they were just like very support, like just like we're here if you,
Good.
need anything, but yeah.
And so then like a whirlwind, well, you said you had a whole bunch of like back-to-back appointments after that. So like what is that like? What are the next steps? Like what happens next?
So basically I just did tons of testing. So it like became almost like a full-time job because I like you have so many appointments and things that you have to remember because also there isn't someone like holding your hand through the process. It's good to keep track of things because, a doctor in one department or a person giving you a test will ask you a question and like you need to have the information to give them. So I like tracked everything in like Google Drive. I would like write down all my appointments and even just like doing all the research and trying to become educated about everything was like literally like a full-time job. So,
well, as like a bystander, the concept of you doing research on your cancer treatment is almost alarming. That you're like Googling what to do. So like what does research look like?
It's a big question because
you're gonna Google.
Yeah, I mean you're gonna find like the worst case scenario that you don't want. The internet is such a weird thing because like you can go down such a terrible dark rabbit hole, but you can also find like amazing support and like clarity on things. So it really depends just like how you use it, I feel like, and it's important to find the right like resources. Like I found a support group where basically women just like that have been diagnosed well, it's a Facebook group, so people just like write stuff in there, ask questions, other people like share their experience. So for me that was like the most important, but that came further down the road. At this point it was literally just like looking up medical papers and like trying to like piece together random information.
Yeah, we were lucky. I have someone in my family who knew basically he's a psychiatrist and he has his father-in-law was an oncologist. So
that's so lucky.
Yeah, it was so lucky. And also my therapist at the time had breast cancer. So
wow,
it was really good timing to have a therapist.
So that's also very true. Yeah.
Yeah. So between like we sent her like whatever paperwork and whatever results that we had to him, and then I was talking about it with my therapist because I had been talking about it with her. It was actually like one of the things that I was talking a lot about in the months leading up, where I was like, oh yeah, I'm also really worried about this lump in Desiree's breast. And, she's like, oh, don't doom and gloom about it. Like it's probably going to be okay. And then I remember as soon as I came in and started crying, and then it was like, oh no, here's what you need to go to war against this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like how I felt we had to prepare was you got to get as much information as you possibly can right away, because you're already in this medical system and the wheels of that system are going to turn with or without your knowledge or consent or whatever, right? Like they're going to put you with whatever doctor you're already registered with. They're not going to recommend you get a second opinion. They're just going to tell you what the course of action is to get rid of it right away.
Right.
And what the fastest move is. And something that was interesting to me that my cousin was talking about, him and I were like sort of debating, like, is it better to take a step back and like look at the whole picture of this diagnosis, get a second opinion from another hospital, and make sure that all things are taken into consideration and other opinions are considered? Or does this fucking thing need to just get out of her? Like, do we need to just like eradicate this cancer as quickly as we can? Because every second we're waiting, like the cancer is growing.
Right.
So, yeah, we read a lot of research papers because that was the only thing also that like didn't seem so definitive. Like when, you look up like a Quora or whatever, Google search,
well,
like
it's
just people being like, I had this and this happened. And most of the time it's people in a panic state who are commenting and then they don't follow up with whatever's happened. So you get them at their absolute like worst possible comment that they could make.
And then you run with that and then go
Yeah, and then you're like,
at
well,
home?
everyone's fucked, so guess like we're in this predicament now.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'm curious to know your conversation with your cousin when you were like, should we get a second opinion or not? Like, where did you square on that? Like, what was your...
well, I thought it was odd that we were going 45 minutes to drive to Mississauga, which is
So maybe we need a little clarity on that. But
Right.
because I didn't know that I could get an appointment in Toronto for the very first ultrasound, I made my appointment in Mississauga to get in faster.
Which, for context of people who are not from here, is about 45-minute drive from the city.
Yeah. So what I didn't know is that if something does show up, then they just put you in the medical system there. So like they're not going to ask you, do you want to go to the hospital in Toronto? They're just going to like put you in the one that you're at. So all of my appointments from that point forward were in Mississauga. So we were driving like 45 minutes to go to every appointment.
and there was a lot. There's like
Yeah.
probably like 6 appointments within a 2-week
Yeah.
period.
Mm.
But like I was just so overwhelmed with everything that the way that I cope with things is like I just want to like go in like a dark hole. Like I don't want to be like proactive and trying to like figure stuff out. Like I'm just like, leave me alone. I'm gonna go to bed.
It's a very interesting relationship dynamic that's happening
Yeah.
here, but okay.
But or you were like that when this happened. I feel like this changed you in a way where
Well,
know,
probably
but yes,
because
at that time,
I saw the positive effects of your actions. But
Aw.
Avery was very like pushing me to like, we need to like get a second opinion, you know, we should like just look at our options, like this might not be the best place for you. So I did all my testing there, and then ended up switching to a hospital in Toronto, like not only for convenience but because it's like people come from other countries to like get cancer treatment here. So it kind of was like a no-brainer, but I still just was like, it's too hard. Like, I just want to like stay where I'm at. Like, everyone is nice to me. Like, I feel comfortable. It's going to be fine. But like in hindsight, looking back, I definitely would have gotten worse care and had a worse outcome. Like for example,
maybe not
well,
I don't know if worse is the right word.
Yeah, my quality of life would have been majorly different.
Yeah, if you got a mastectomy, it would have been absolutely, yeah.
Like the doctors there were pushing me to get in Mississauga, were pushing me to get a mastectomy just because I was so young. They were like, we need to take like the most severe course of action so that like you know, have the best results. And then I had an appointment with the plastic surgeon there, and it was literally like a cattle farm. Like, I'm not even kidding. There was like a line. First of all, just to get into that appointment, there was a line up in the hallway of like 15 people. And then we got into the room, and it was just like one of those big hospital rooms that has like curtained off little like rooms. And he was just whipping around between like the different like curtained off sections. And it was all people getting like surgery for cancer, was it?
No, not all cancer.
He's just like a plastic, a medical plastic surgeon. But I think he did a lot of like breast cancer surgeries. And he told me in that appointment, because I had brought up like, I don't know if I want to get a mastectomy. Like, I think I'd rather do a lumpectomy for a lot of reasons. Like, when you get a mastectomy, a lot of people have to deal with pain forever, and you have like a phantom boob, and it's just like not natural, right? So there's a lot of side effects that you deal with.
Some people don't have a choice.
Yeah, some people don't.
Where with their diagnosis, they have to get a mastectomy, especially if you have genetic history, if you have the BCRA gene, right? BRCA gene.
Yeah.
It's likely you'll get it again. So they'll just remove the breast, because if there's no tissue, then they're going to eliminate the duplication of the cancer. But yeah, it wasn't postured to us in that appointment that lumpectomy was possible, and also that the recurrence rate was only a 2% difference between the two.
So if you got a mastectomy versus a lumpectomy, you're just 2% less likely to get it if you get a whole mastectomy?
In tandem with the other treatments.
But they didn't tell us that at that point. It was more just like, you'll just be better off if you have a mastectomy. Like, they didn't really communicate, those differences. So, and he also told me, I brought up that I would rather do a lumpectomy if that was an option. And he like looked at it and basically told me that if he did a lumpectomy, like I would have like a hugely misshapen boob. Like, to me, that was a huge, like marker in our journey, I guess, of making the right decision to move to the different hospital. Because when we did move and I had an appointment with the plastic surgeon there in Toronto.
And just for clarity, did you guys move to Princess Margaret?
So basically, I spoke to my cousin who had talked to his father-in-law, who was an oncologist. They were like, yeah, look, there's probably some time here that we can make a decision, like because it's precancerous. And at that point, there were other tests, and the MRI and the CT scan had determined that there was no spread. So that was fucking awesome. That was the best news, jump for joy moment, learning that, because you're so nervous in that time, in those 3 weeks. But getting her into another hospital took like 4 weeks. Like it was, you leave a voicemail, panicking. Hey, holy shit! Like we have this diagnosis. Okay, yeah, call this voicemail and tell them your situation. They'll call you back and see who's taking new patients, whatever. So I had a list of doctors from my therapist, and this is why you should tell everyone you know, because even though you don't want to drop these bombs on people, that's how you're going to find support and information, is from other people who are going through this. And you shouldn't be afraid to tell people, because if we didn't, it would have looked a lot different. But anyways, it wasn't just like, oh, we're going to go to this hospital. So once she got accepted,
and they're busy, like
yeah,
it's busy. Breast cancer, unfortunately, is
busy business.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was funny though, because the Mississauga hospital was beautiful. It was like new. There was plants on the inside, like nice waterfall music going on. And as soon as we walked into Princess Margaret, it was just like, dang.
Well,
hospital.
it wasn't Princess Margaret.
Mount Sinai.
It
was just, yeah. Basically, her doctor was part of the Princess Margaret breast cancer team, I guess, or network. But Mount Sinai and Princess Margaret, because they're like side by side.
Mm-hmm.
Doctors from Princess Margaret work in Mount Sinai.
They like share a space essentially. Yeah. Okay.
But Mount Sinai Hospital was like going through construction. And
and it's like downtown. Like we're from
old.
Winnipeg. I was like familiar with the like big hospital in like the suburbs, and now I'm like downtown with like literally construction tarps and like
in like the
and it's like a mall. Like the lobby is just like a mall. I'm like, okay, this is like so weird. I don't know. I definitely felt a lot more like not as comfortable, but it's funny because the outcome I think was way better.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny because I don't even remember that. I feel like I've just
it took time, but I was pretty like certain that a second opinion with something that big, like to remove your breast or not, was pretty important. And I just want to say that I did say 2% before. I think it was between 4 and 6% was the difference, but
I don't remember.
It's small enough.
Not medical advice. Yeah. I don't know. Check with your doctor. But it wasn't an extreme amount. It wasn't like
it's not like night and day scenario.
No.
Okay.
But her diagnosis was pitched to her as, you should probably get the surgery for sure, and then there was a couple options of the next course, which was like,
well, that we needed. So basically, in my case, because they didn't find any cancer in the biopsies, it was to like get surgery to get the tumor removed, and then they had to like look at it to determine if I had to do any further treatment.
Right, because precancerous, meaning like your cancer cells are actually not in there, and you guys have now determined that it hasn't spread. Mm-hmm. So it might have been as simple as just remove the tumor, sew you back up.
Yeah.
Call it a day.
Exactly. That at that point, that's what I was looking at, was like best case scenario. It's just surgery. And so my first appointment at Mount Sinai was with the surgical oncologist. And I feel very lucky to have gotten in with her because she is amazing. But I proposed the same thing to her because I think she kind of came into that appointment thinking mastectomy too was just the more maybe common thing that people do. I'm not sure. But she was kind of like, oh yeah, okay, like maybe I could do like a lumpectomy in this case. And she definitely like started to consider it. And then I think she was the one that told me like, yeah, it's not that big of a difference really, but there is like a chance that if I miss some or something, then we'll have to do a second surgery.
Yeah, it's kind of on her in some ways, like your surgical oncologist, because there's like margins of the spread already. Right. So it's sort of like, I don't actually know until I'm in there how much tissue we have to remove, right, and what are the safe margins for healthy tissue where there hasn't been any precancerous spread.
I think they calculate that because they know the size of the tumor, so they have to take out like tissue around it. So there's like margins that they have to. So I think she looked at mine and was like, okay, yeah, like we can do it with safe margins.
Mhm.
But if I go in and I'm unable to, then we'll have to do another surgery. So like
Right.
just be prepared for that. So
How did that sound to you?
I was just so happy that I didn't have
Yeah.
to do a mastectomy. I was like, okay, we're good. Like
And she was amazing. Like, I think
Yeah.
I got to be there for the first appointment, and then COVID took over, and I just couldn't go to any other appointments. But
Right.
man,
Okay.
what
we'll
what
get
a
to
night
that.
and day difference
Yeah.
certain doctors will make. Because same thing, intensely intelligent, but had this sort of motherly, big sister like aura of just like I'm there for you, like I'm gonna do my best to take care of you. Let's talk about what you want. Because she was the one who really sort of was like, it's your decision. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you what I think and what we should do, but it's up to you what you want, and it is up to you, to anyone who's dealing with their health. Like,
That's the difference. I really at the first hospital felt like I was just part of like a cattle line. Like I felt like, okay, I'm just in this like queue and they're telling me what I have to do and I don't really have a choice. But when I went to Mount Sinai, like it definitely felt a lot more like I have choice. I have a voice in this, you know, and they're like willing to work with me. I'm not just like something to be treated. Like, so I had the surgery and then,
Okay, because I
yeah.
need to ask, because this is now like top of 2020, correct? Like COVID is upon us.
yes.
Yeah.
Like,
So you had the lumpectomy. So I guess that's the first thing that happens, because I guess in my mind, I'm like, is the surgery like the last thing that happens? But I guess it makes sense. It's first. So did that surgery happen during, like, was this after March 2020? Like things were shut down?
yeah, so the first time I met with the surgical oncologist at Mount Sinai was in March, early March. I think it was like right before things had shut down because I think you were with me.
I
maybe.
was, and like
And
all the TVs like in the waiting rooms were like, COVID is coming,
Oh
you know,
God.
like
Yeah.
CP24 doom time for our Toronto people. They'll know.
And then like my surgery was only happened in the summer. So I had to wait like 3 months to get my surgery. I think it was in June. Yeah, it was the end of June. So at that point,
Was it-
like
was
no
it-
one.
Was it June 24th?
25th.
Ah, fuck.
Close.
Wow, Avery.
Fuck.
Still, brownie
Um,
points.
But I had an appointment on the 24th, so maybe that's what you're remembering. But
Maybe.
but yeah, so it was end of June. So at that point, no one could come. So any of my appointments, like mid-March on, like no one could come with me. And it's weird because I really just got used to that. Like it didn't really bother me that much. And now I'm just like, now I don't even think about like asking you to come to anything because I'm just like used to going on my own. But I do remember being kind of like nervous to go to the surgery alone. Like obviously Avery dropped me off, but in my mind of like, I haven't had surgery before. I'm just thinking of like people getting surgery in the movies and they like wake up and then their families like all around them, like looking at them, you know, and you're just like blinking. And I'm like, so that's what I'm thinking it's going to be like. And then no, I just have to like wake up and be alone, you know? So,
Oh my God, that's so scary.
yeah. So that was like a little nerve wracking. But it was completely fine. It's like I close my eyes and then I open them and it's done, you know. And then it's like a day surgery. I went home the same day.
Yeah, it's really fast. Like,
Wow.
it
Yeah.
was only like 4 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How'd it go?
So yeah, it was like amazing. Like I couldn't look at it for a while because it was like, you know, bandaged and stuff. But when I was able to, like, even when I still had stitches and stuff, I feel like I could tell that it was like pretty good because the shape, like it was like the same. I just had
wow.
like a giant scar, but like everything was the same. And I was immediately just like very happy. Like I didn't have any really negative feelings about it. I was just like, okay, this is like best case scenario. And when I had my follow-up appointment with her, I remember her like walking into the room and then looking at it and being like, "Oh my God, like I'm a genius." Yeah.
She said, I think I did a pretty good job.
Yeah, she's like, I think I did a pretty good job. So, like, to me, just that, thinking about my possible outcome in the first hospital being just so negative, like,
Right.
and to this one was huge. Like, I think that is what really, like, flipped my thinking to, like, okay, yeah, you really have to take ownership of, like, your path because it can really change your outcome.
Mm-hmm. So once that surgery is finished, like, could you technically be done? Like, that could be the end of the road?
Yeah, so what happened next is they take the tumor and then they like examine it and then they look at it and then you get the results if it has cancerous cells or not. So I was like hoping, I was just being very optimistic, hoping that I would just only have to do surgery and then it would be over. But I remember going to my follow-up appointment, which was also with the surgical oncologist, and it was like just I think the most nervous I've ever been in my life because you're just like sitting there waiting to find out your future. And I remember I had to wait 2 hours for that appointment. It was the longest I've had to wait for any appointment, like, which is so annoying. I'm like, okay, of course this one. And I was just like sitting in the waiting room, like trying not to like have a panic attack. But I went in and she said like, okay, so we actually have like a little bit of a surprise. And I was like, oh, great.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. So she told me that they found, like, it was like a millimeter, like 2 millimeters of like cancer cells or something, like tiny.
They counted them. There was like 14 cells.
It was like tiny.
Wow.
Yeah. Within the tumor. So at that point, she referred me to a medical oncologist because they handle like any additional treatment. So like chemo, medication, like all radiation, all of that stuff. They will figure out your course of action. So I had to, but that was a hard moment for me because, I was thinking that I would be like done.
Of course.
And
Yeah.
then everything changed and I was like, oh, okay, fuck, like I have to get more.
And now it's like a definitive diagnosis because they're like, yep, we poked tons of holes into this tumor. We didn't find any cancer. And then they take it out and they say, actually, yeah, you do have cancer.
So about a year later, you got an answer to your question of whether it's cancerous or not.
Well,
Right.
yeah, it's a half a year later.
Mhm.
Yeah, we got an answer and it upgraded her diagnosis. So she was considered like stage 0, which is really funny when you think of all this stress and all of this like trauma that you're going through and it's just stage 0.
At what point did you guys know that it was stage 0?
Well, that's what it's called when you're precancerous, right?
I think we just
Okay.
like figured that out on our own.
Yeah,
honestly.
they wouldn't even, we'd be, I was
Yeah.
like, what stage is this? And I think they don't do that as much
Yeah.
here, but
Yeah.
then the only reason that we knew is because, which we haven't talked about, we should talk about, is work. So for her to get an insurance benefit, she had to be stage 1 breast cancer.
Yeah.
Oh
So
my
otherwise she
God.
wouldn't get this like payout for being off work. Through our work, we had insurance.
So one thing we should mention is that you guys were in Toronto, Canada, therefore you have OHIP or like government healthcare to an extent. Doesn't cover everything, but that probably made things a little bit easier.
Oh, I can't even imagine having to deal with the financial like burden of that if we didn't have, like, if we were in the US, for example, and didn't have insurance. Like, that's, people go into like millions of dollars in debt to do like a cancer treatment.
It's fucked to think about having to not have an easy way out of this. Like, a financial component is the last thing that you can fathom in the beginnings of that situation, for sure. And yeah, we're very blessed to have our health care, and even though you waited a lot of hours, I think that more than pays up for the overall care that we got.
Oh yeah, for sure. I didn't really, I mean, I know that some people wait longer and have worse experiences with that, but I didn't really feel like I was waiting too long. Like, I waited a couple months for my surgery. I think that's what I was like the most nervous about.
But that was because
it really wasn't that bad.
That was because it was COVID.
Yeah.
Right.
They weren't doing surgeries that
Right.
weren't life-threatening. They didn't deem her surgery life-threatening enough for a while, and that's why you waited a couple months for the surgery. But
So OHIP covers to an extent, and then the rest of it like was covered by your work, but not for a while because it was stage 0.
So,
Because I'm not even thinking about like, are you working this whole time?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's been 6 months of like appointments.
yeah, so actually, like, pretty much everything is
Everything
covered
is
by
covered.
OHIP.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There's like certain medications or some random little things that won't be covered, but like we didn't have to pay for it.
It was the
much.
fertility stuff that then wasn't covered.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
everything else, the surgery is fully covered. The biopsies, all the mammograms, everything, the radiation, the chemotherapy, that's all covered.
Shout out Canada, eh?
Yeah. No, it was really good that way. So yeah, insurance was more just like for if you stop working.
Oh, I see.
I was I was very lucky because where I was working at the time, I actually I continued working until my surgery, and then I was off. And I was off for about, well, technically I was like off until I started working with you guys.
Right.
Which is funny, but that was like October, I think, of that year. I was lucky because they kept me. I was like not working, but they kind of kept me on for a while to just help support. So that was really nice.
they were really nice.
Yeah. So I was really lucky that way. But I had access to like an insurance payout that I couldn't get unless I was stage 1. So at least there was that. I was like, okay, well I get paid
Yeah.
for like having cancer, but
that payout was essential too.
well, yeah, there was a lot of expenses.
There was a lot of expenses. Once the chemo came into play after, then there was some like things that like.
And I guess it came into play once you found out that there was cancer cells in the lump.
Yeah, because you're stage 0, and then once they found the cancer, they would up her to stage 1.
I think one of the main things that it really helped with was like transportation, because I had to go to the hospital so much, and it's like, you know, you don't feel great. Like, I don't want to be taking like the bus every day. So I used it on Uber. Like, that's what I used it a lot on. And then there was, some expenses with the chemo, but I feel like.
I was actually going to ask that. So outside of like the mental, like draining that's happening, do you physically feel okay? Like outside of the lump or like now just the scarring?
Yeah, it's funny because the actual cancer didn't cause me any like physical discomfort, like zero.
Right.
Like I didn't feel sick ever from it. I never felt pain. I couldn't feel the tumor. Like I felt fine. It was the treatment that causes you like the most discomfort. Right. And I think like even the surgery was like fine. Obviously it took me a while to like heal and recover, but even that wasn't like too painful. Like it was pretty okay. It was more things related with the chemo that were like painful.
How quickly did you have to get into chemo? Is that like step like right after they were like you have to just get into it?
Yeah, so I had my appointment with the medical oncologist, and I remember like doing research and then like going into that appointment being like, I'm going to like tell them that I don't need it. Like if they try to tell me that I need chemo, I'm going to be like, no, because of this and blah, blah, blah.
And it is your choice too. Again.
Yeah. You can say no.
Right.
Yeah. And also for me, because it was such a small amount, like it's more of a precautionary thing that they're doing it for. It's like if one cancer cell escaped into your body somewhere, like, you know, they do it so that that cancer cell gets killed.
Right.
So yeah, so I had the appointment with the medical oncologist. I was prepared to tell them no. And then, like, they come in and start talking, and I'm like, okay, yeah, like, I don't think I can get out of this. But
why? Like, what? Because they biopsied your lymph node too. Mm-hmm. So during the surgery, when they took the tumor out, they also take out some lymph nodes in your armpit because then they can tell if there's any cancerous cells in those, and then that was one reason for sure that you would need chemo.
But you didn't find any. They didn't find any lymph nodes.
No.
Okay.
So, I don't know. I think they just it's just like the pressure of the appointment and stuff, and it's thinking like worst case scenario, if I could prevent something from like getting way worse or coming back or like whatever, I should just do everything that I can. Like that's
full measures.
kind of what I came away with. But that appointment was interesting because it's like a new system, like the surgery kind of process is one thing, and then you're in this whole other system of like seeing the same people at the hospital every day that like work in the oncology department, and just like the way that things work, like they have these little purple slips of paper, and that's how when you start doing chemo, they write your like appointments on those and give them to you because they're quite often, and they write like the chemo drugs and stuff on those. So obviously in my first appointment, I didn't know what they were. And they also use them just for like scrap paper, but they say in huge letters like chemotherapy on them. So I walked to like my appointment room, and you know how they put like the folders in the door? There was like one of those papers in there, and all I saw was like chemotherapy, and I was like, oh fuck, like I'm gonna have to do it. Like it's in the door. But they were good too. Like they gave me a lot of information and like scientifically like drew diagrams of like, you know, why they, you know, what the chemo does and why they thought that I should do it. So
What does chemo do?
So it kills, I think it just kills like any like radical cells in your body. So it doesn't just specifically target cancer. Like it will kill like anything.
That's
why.
What's a radical cell?
Well, it can be anything.
Like fast-growing cells.
Yeah.
So like your hair is like fast-growing cells because it like grows.
Oh,
right?
that's why people lose hair.
Your nails. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's why you lose hair. Exactly.
Yeah. So so it'll just kill like anything like that. So that's why also like people that are on harder doses of chemo like get really sick and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But so basically they recommended that I do 2 drugs. And at this point, they also told me, this is probably important, they told me the type of breast cancer that I have because they could only see that from the cancer cells. So there's estrogen. So I was estrogen positive. So that means that estrogen like basically feeds the cancer, which sucks because it's like a natural hormone that you need. And then progesterone. So I was progesterone negative. And then HER2 is like this other thing. And I was HER2 positive, which HER2 is a little bit more like aggressive of a type. I was HER2 positive. So the way that they treat you is it's actually better to be like from my understanding, it's better to be positive, like some positives, because they have like targeted treatments for those things. If you're like estrogen negative, progesterone negative, HER2 negative, like they don't really know how to treat that because they don't know like what is, you know, causing it per se. So they suggested that I do a drug called Taxol, which is like I had to go weekly for 12 rounds. And then Herceptin, which is specifically to target the HER2. And I had to do that every 3 weeks for a year. And those are both intravenous like things. So you have to go to the hospital and like get it done.
So chemo, like it's actually like a drug and they give you, I actually just realized that I never really knew how they administer it. So just an intravenous drug?
Yeah.
So you just go and they're giving you an IV essentially?
Exactly.
Yeah, just a clear liquid in a bag.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and so basically for most people that do a lot of chemo, like I had to go weekly, they don't want to give it to you like through your arm or whatever because like eventually your veins will just like reject it. So they recommend that you get like a port. So basically I had to go get like a surgery to put in this little, it was like, that was like a terrifying thing for me because it's like, it connects, it's like this little thing and it connects to like your arteries, has like tubes that connects to your arteries.
By your heart.
By your heart. Yeah. Mine was on this side. So it was like by my heart. And you're awake for that. They just gave me like some fentanyl or something, I think. And it's like fucked because you feel them like tugging your chest and like putting this thing in. And it was probably like this big. Like how big is that? That's like bigger than
like it's like golf balls.
Yeah, like a golf ball.
It's a golf ball.
Yeah.
I see your golf references.
Yes.
I'm right there with
You're right
you.
there with me.
But it's flat, right?
So it's like probably half an inch thick. So it would stick out from my chest, and it was just under like a thin layer of skin.
Right.
So I got that surgery done, and like they didn't give me any painkillers for the recovery, and it was like so painful, and they had to give me chemo through the next day. Like basically they will just connect the intravenous.
Yeah.
It's like a needle that just goes into this like thing.
Port that you now have on your body.
Exactly.
That is wild.
Yeah.
And for some reason they decided not to give her any pain relief, and she was like
it was
like
so painful.
Yeah, she came home like Avery, I need something, like, and luckily I
talked to my oncologist the next day, and they like gave me some Percocets or something. And at that point it was very early on. Like my first chemo session I had through the arm. My second one I had the port, but it was like the day after that I had the port surgery that I had my second session. So it was like so painful.
Do you still have this port?
No.
Oh, they remove it after?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they remove it. I got it removed pretty soon after I finished.
Are people allowed to go into chemo sessions with somebody? Like usually, but because it was COVID, you had to do chemo by yourself too.
Everyone else had to do chemo by themselves. My saving grace was that we were doing cold capping, which is another thing we should probably explain. But
everyone pay attention. Pay attention to the cold capping.
But because of that, Avery was like allowed to come with me.
When Desiree found out that she had to do chemo, all of a sudden you're confronted with hair loss, and that you're gonna lose your hair. And
at the age of 29, I'm sure you were like,
yeah, no thanks.
And y'all can't see, but she's got just a beautiful head of hair.
She really does.
She really does. You really do. It's a thick, luscious head of hair.
Thank you.
But you can talk about it. I mean, how did you find the cold caps, and what are the cold caps?
Yeah, because until you told me about cold capping, I've never ever heard anybody talk about it.
I didn't know it existed either until I think you know what? It was actually one of my doctors at the hospital that told me about it. I think it was the medical oncologist, which is really surprising because I think she told me and then she stopped telling people or didn't tell anyone else, or maybe I was like a special patient.
It was your hair. Because she was like, fuck, we gotta save this hair.
Yeah, maybe. Because they definitely didn't want to accommodate. I mean, I got the vibe they didn't want to accommodate a lot of people because it is kind of like a lift. Like we had to bring a lot of stuff into the hospital, and they gave us our own private room, which was really nice, but it takes up a lot of space.
But what is it? What's cold capping?
So basically the technology or science behind it, I guess, is that you freeze your head, you freeze your hair follicles. And actually what's happening is it's just slowing your blood flow so that the chemo drugs don't go through there. Mm-hmm. So they're not touching your hair follicles or whatever.
I think it's too, because then it tricks the chemo because it's slowed down. It makes it think that it's not rapidly growing or something.
I'm not sure, maybe.
But either way, the chemo just doesn't affect your hair. So your hair follicles stay in place.
Yeah, and so it's a different success rate for everyone, and it depends what kind of chemo you're on. Mine was a little bit less intense, so I think that's also why it worked really well. I also have very thick hair. But basically what it is, it's a giant, and there's different forms, but the one that I did was a manual system, so it's literally these helmets that they fold out flat, and then you can fold them into a helmet. And they have kind of gel inside of them that freezes. So you have to, it was a very intense process because we rented them from a company and then we had them at home. We had to keep them frozen. I can't remember if we kept them frozen, but we had to.
Yes.
Off time?
No, in the days leading up to, in the day leading up to it.
Mm-hmm. But anyways, you get 3 because you have to switch them every 20 minutes or so that they stay peak coldness.
How long is a chemo session?
It would vary because I did Herceptin only every 3rd week. So those were probably 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. My other one was an hour and a half if I wasn't doing the Herceptin. And you have to do the cold caps pretty much the whole time. So we had to be switching them on and off every 20 minutes for that long. It was a lift for sure.
How were you doing that if you had a IV in your arm?
Well, Avery did.
Or in your chest. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Avery,
that's why Avery had to come with me. Yeah.
Yeah, I got special permission to go because of this.
Right.
And that's probably why they stopped telling people that they could do it. But normally what they would have is that a rep from the cold caps place would come, and there's like it's hooked up to a machine that keeps the helmet. Like, it's got to be extremely
Yeah, that's
cold.
a different kind.
Oh,
Yeah.
so
There's a different way of doing. That's like a different company though.
Oh, okay.
It's like a different way. There's like an electronic version
Yeah.
where it hooks up to a machine and someone from the company comes and like actually does it for you. And I think it's more of like a plastic helmet. It's not like
But it's
the
like
manual ones, but they weren't doing that because of COVID.
Right.
I have to stress that like these helmets are like they're minus 30 degrees Celsius, which is whatever 0 degrees Fahrenheit for you American weirdos. But it's 30 below that you have to maintain as
So
a
you're wearing
temperature.
gloves to touch it, obviously, right? Because
Yes.
your skin would freeze to it.
So basically, like, because it was like she had so much, they give her Benadryl before the chemo, because of some people will have severe allergic reactions when the chemo just comes in. So an antihistamine like helps that. And she was zonked. Like, as soon as this Benadryl shit hit, it was just like zannied out, like.
But in a bad way, not in a good way. I was like internally having a panic attack.
She's
but,
having
like,
a panic
my
attack,
body's
but
asleep.
yeah, inside she's having a panic attack. Outside she's like drooling. Like,
Yeah.
she was like just. I remember the first time because I was just like, whoa, like, what did they give you? Like, is that the chemo? And it's like, no, that's just the Benadryl. So there's no way she's putting the cold caps on when she's like that.
Right.
And so, like, yeah, I became the cold cap sergeant.
Yeah.
And basically they give you these 3 helmets. They look like Sonic the Hedgehog, like helmet masks that you put on. And we would have an order of dry ice that would come and get delivered a day before the chemo. They would drop the dry ice off in this cooler, and then
At our
house. And then in the mornings, I would put the helmets into the dry ice, and within like 20 minutes, they were 30 below.
Wow.
And so then I would like cycle out each one of these helmets in this like 2 hour, whatever, 1 hour period where it was just like, I think I would usually go through about five. I think it was it every 20 or 15 or something?
Yeah.
I feel like it was
I think
faster.
It was like 20 minutes or 15 minutes maybe. But I would start to feel it like, it's funny because I feel like my head was so numb that I didn't even know what was going on. But as soon as it started getting a little warm, I would like get anxiety that like my hair was going to fall out because it was getting warm. And I would like get mad at Avery because he was distracted on his phone or something. But like I didn't want to get mad because you're like helping me
It's true.
so much. But it's crazy because you came to the hospital with me every time, and it was like 7 a.m. that we would have to go.
12 times.
Yeah, 12 times, and you were still working. It's not like you were off.
Yeah, I wasn't just on
Wow.
Twitter the whole time.
No, I know you were doing like work calls.
I was mostly on Twitter. But yeah.
But yeah, so we were doing that, and then I was also freezing my hands and my feet for a different reason, because one of the effects of the chemo is that it can cause like severe neuropathy in your hands and feet. So it's basically just like numbness and tingling, but it's like they consider it pretty important because it can get really bad. So they'll actually like stop your treatment if it gets bad enough. So I think I went into, and I had found out, I think through my Facebook group or something, about like freezing your hands to prevent that. And I actually got like gifted it's like special gloves and things. It's like the same thing, like gel that you like freeze in the gloves.
And on your feet as well?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So someone in the Facebook group had done it and they were done. So they were like, oh, do you want like my kit? So they mailed it to me, which was like
that's so
amazing.
nice.
Yeah. And then, so I had it and I brought it to the first appointment, and I remember like trying to do it in the first appointment. And I think I had them on for 10 minutes or something. And then I was like, fuck this. Like, I can't do it. It literally feels like just sticking your hands straight in snowbanks for like, and you have to do it for like 2 hours.
And the socks.
Yeah, and the socks on my
Yeah.
feet, like it hurts. Like it was painful. Plus I have like the helmet on my head. It's heavy. I'm like drooling.
Oh yeah.
I like, also the way that you put on the helmet is like very like, they didn't have like they send you like a kit. But it's not really like built for comfort. So they just give you like literally a pad like for your period, and they're like, oh, just stick it onto your head, and then the helmet goes over so it won't like scratch your forehead or whatever.
Freeze your forehead.
Freeze your forehead. So I'm like, have a pad on my head, and then like the bottom strap would like cut my chin, so I put like a cloth, so I literally have like a drool rag, and my hands are in these giant frozen mittens.
You know what it looks like? It looks like a rugby helmet, like an old 1940s like rugby helmet that you put on without with a chin strap, but it's your drool your drool napkin hanging
Yes.
from it.
It
So
was very unattractive, I think.
no, it was hot.
Okay, shout out Avery for being boyfriend of the year.
Yes. It was very, like, that's where you, like, really, I mean, you were there for me the whole time, but I feel like that's where you, like, really showed up for me.
I stepped up to the plate.
Yeah.
God damn it!
Yes.
You
Or
have
whatever
to,
you call it, to stepping up to the golf hole.
I
thing.
stepped up to the first
Golf
tee.
hole.
Stepped up to the first golf hole. No, I stepped on that tee, the back
Yeah.
tees. But you have to, you know, like as the partner, it like I wanted to be there. Like I didn't want to miss anything, and I am glad that I got to go there because I got to experience a lot.
Well, that's the thing too. Like, it would have been weird if I had to do it all alone and then like just come home and then you have no idea like what, because you
Right.
can't explain it to someone, and even you being there, you can never fully understand my experience, but at least you being there and seeing it, it's like you have a deeper understanding
Right.
than me just coming home and like telling you what happened.
Yeah,
Right.
but you were also pretty amazing with that whole thing too, because like, I mean, you were meditating a lot at that time to like help you go through that, because like once a week or once every 2 weeks to go through that is fucking intense. Like you were basically having a guaranteed panic attack for like 30 minutes
It was like,
because of the Benadryl, right?
yeah, I mean, in my head, I honestly was like, this is like running a marathon. Like, if I can like pull this off, it's like an achievement. Like, it's like
Mhm.
a self-discipline like practice, you know? And I did do a lot of things to help manage my anxiety throughout the whole process. Meditating was like a huge thing. I never meditated before any of this, and then I started, and like that really helped. But
Were you meditating just like throughout, or were you also meditating like while you were getting your chemo? If
I-
that's even possible.
so I think like, so I was just doing it at home.
Mhm.
But when I was in those situations of like high anxiety, I noticed that like deep breathing would just kind of like automatically like kick in. And I think it was because I was like literally training my brain to just like be
Right.
able to, you know, be present and like deal with, just kind of like self-soothe, I guess.
Right.
Um,
Did you end up being able to like do the hand and feet freezing thing?
yeah, so I was like, fuck this, I'm not going to do it after the first one. And then I think I did 2 more sessions, and I started like feeling a lot of just weirdness in my hands. And I was like, okay, like I think I have to, like, I don't think I have a choice. And then on the 4th session, I did it, and like all the pain and stuff went away. Like I didn't feel it again. So I just kept doing it every time.
Like the tingling went away.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So it really worked. Like it really, really helped.
And I know you were mentioning fertility, and I know that has to do with chemo. So like, what was the process around that? Especially you being so young.
I just want to say that when we were going through all the initial tests after the biopsy, they send you for like the genetics testing, and the genetics testing like plays a big role in how the entire treatment looks, because Desiree had no history of breast cancer in her
Like no family
no
history.
family history
Mhm.
of breast cancer. She did have a history of other cancers, but not breast cancer. And they determined that she didn't have the genetic marker for breast cancer or passing it on, which is sort of odd. Then you
'Cause
start
she's also
thinking,
so young.
yeah, you start thinking, what is this? It must be environmental? Like, is it just an anomaly? And the geneticist was really good in explaining like just how cancer is essentially like one bad cell that can't repair itself, that duplicates over and over and over again. You have this mechanism, I think it's like a two-FA system of the cell being able to repair itself. And when 1 or 2 of those both shut off, then that's when you get cancer, because the cell duplicates in a way where it's deformed. Or so when that information is given, and then chemo is also factored in, now you have this sort of like bigger worldview of your diagnosis, and they tell you, okay, we're going to do chemo, just so you know, chemo can affect your ability to reproduce.
Yeah. That was kind of like the biggest, I mean, walking into chemo itself is just like very scary, because you have no idea like what the side effects are going to be. Obviously in the movies it's very dramatic, you know. But that was like a really big thing for me with the continued treatment, was just like, what side effects is this going to cause for me going forward? And one of the big ones is fertility. because chemo, can damage your ovaries basically. So
Yeah, it's like that's the other thing is like all these treatments.
It's like a gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah,
exactly.
Rolling with the endless punches.
Anything that you take or do, you have to think what is the side effects of this going to be?
Right.
Yeah. So so they refer you to a fertility clinic basically just to get kind of like what they do is they just figure out like your baseline, like where you're at, if things are good, whatever. They also test your partner to find out. And then you have the option to freeze eggs to like basically have them just in case something goes wrong and like your ovaries are damaged. And there are costs associated with that. That is also where some of the insurance money came into play because that isn't like covered. Some of it is covered, but not all of it. I think we ended up having to pay like $4,000 or something.
Same with the cold caps. They weren't covered.
Yeah.
Right.
So we went to the fertility clinic, and to us it was kind of just like a funny experience because we were like, oh yeah, we see this in the movies. Like it's always like
I'm really loving all loving references that you guys.
Yeah,
are
what do you keep?
coming
What movies are you watching?
I don't know. That's like all we do is watch movies.
What
so
are the cancer movies? 50-50?
I don't know.
Where he just gets high and does the chemo?
No, it's like I've never been in a fertility clinic, but I've seen it on TV. You know what I mean? So, and it is
egg
really
freezing is also like a whole thing people are talking about now. So
yeah. And it is really like you see on TV, like it's just like pictures of babies all over the walls, and like we were kind of just like,
oh my God.
It's a little nuts.
There's all these other couples, and we're just kind of like, oh, we don't need to be here, like we're just here for like precaution, you know.
Same shit as that other waiting room, the first cancer one, where you're looking around and you're like, why am I here?
Yeah, exactly. So we like go into our appointment. We each have to do our own separate testing. So for me, it was like a vaginal ultrasound, which is super fun, and they count your follicles basically to figure out like
through the ultrasound they can count it.
That's what they do.
That's crazy.
It's on the screen, and like they literally count like while it's in you, they're counting like on the screen how many. So and follicles are where the eggs are grown basically. So the eggs come out of, so it's not your actual eggs, it's like that's where your eggs come out of, and I guess the more you have the better.
Right.
And then I think I did a blood test too, and Avery had to do his thing.
Yeah, so she had to like have a vaginal ultrasound, and I got to jack off into a cup.
And for reference, a vaginal ultrasound is literally essentially like a dildo going inside of
it's
you.
It's
huge dildo.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, it is.
Huge.
And they like move it to each side, and it's like, oh my God. But yeah, so we each did our tests, you know, kind of feeling like, well, nothing is visibly wrong, so like we're probably fine. And then we went in I think I got my results that day because they can like tell you pretty much on the spot. But Avery had to wait for his. So they told me that mine were like lower than normal, but still within like the normal range. So I was like, okay, I mean, that sucks, but whatever.
Yeah. And this is a whole other system that you're in now with the fertility, where it's a new set of doctors. It's actually like a private clinic. It's like some of it is paid for by our
for us, but for other people, I think you pretty much have to pay out of pocket.
Yeah, when you get cancer, you get a free round of IVF and a free round of...
It's a free egg retrieval and a free round of IVF, but for both of those, you have to pay for the drugs.
What's IVF again?
IVF is when you actually take the egg and like implant it with sperm and then put it in.
Okay. Yeah. So this would happen like later when you actually want to have kids. Okay.
Yes. But the egg retrieval process is covered as well. So they have to take the eggs out and then put it back in.
Except for the medication. You have to pay for that.
Yeah. But now you have this other doctor. Whole other world. And it was an interesting, unforgettable experience. Because the doctor that we got was very quirky. Quirky... inappropriate. I don't know.
It's just like weird. It's just
weird. Yeah, we had this experience where we had a doctor. She was very assuming of like what was going to happen next. So like, you know, it was just like, oh, you're coming in. Oh, you have breast cancer. Oh no, but we're going to get you a baby. Like it was just very like baby focused. Like everything was just all about, I'm going to make you a baby. Not like, do you even want a baby right now? Like, is now a good time for a baby? It's like, if you're in there, you're coming out with a baby. So that was like not something that I felt needed to be
I just want to ask, did you guys at this point have a conversation about whether you wanted kids?
So, I think we had, but not like super seriously. Like we didn't. And she did this thing in our first appointment with her where she made us like write down on a piece of paper separately, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you want to have a kid? Like, how important is it to you? And then show each other, like in front of her in the appointment. I was like, is that really necessary?
No, it probably isn't necessary, but she was a weirdo.
That's like, she definitely gets off on that. That's like a weird.
So what were your
exercise.
numbers?
I think I put 9, and then I think Avery put 8, and then told me later that he only put it so high because he thought that I was going to put it high.
No, I didn't say that. I think you put like 10, 9.5 or 10, and I put like one decimal lower. I think you put 9 and I put 8.
Yeah.
And the only reason I put 8 was in case she couldn't have kids.
Oh,
As like a fail-safe of being
you
like...
remember this very wrong.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You remember this real wrong.
Sorry.
Yeah. So I put 8, she put 9, and it was like, yeah, we wanted kids.
Yeah.
I mean, we had talked about having a family, but we weren't ready at 29.
No.
And also, like, all these things start costing a lot of money, and then they put on you like it's baby time, and you're like, I'm not fucking rich. I'm not ready for this.
I also
shit.
have cancer.
You're also dealing with cancer.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So we had that appointment, and it was very like I guess the nice thing about a private clinic is that like you actually get time with doctors. So our appointment with her was like an hour long.
Too long.
And she like talked through kind of like all the processes of like getting your egg retrieval and whatever. So I did decide that I wanted to do it. So I went through that whole process. And ended up coming out with like 10 eggs, which she told me that someone my age should get like 20. So I was like, okay. but I was happy with 10 because I was like, what if I get like 2? You know?
Now you can have 10 kids.
Yeah. What if you get 2?
But no, actually, it's like it's a lot of the eggs like there's a chance of them not making it through the defrosting whatever process.
So wait, real quick.
Yeah.
How does the egg retrieval process work?
So basically they put you on birth control for a couple days to time your period, and then you have to start taking daily injections. So they give you they do the first one for you in the clinic and show you how to do it, and then you take everything home and you do daily like hormone injections. And what those are doing is growing so on your period you usually just have 1 egg that's created and then released. But when you do an egg retrieval, you're taking these drugs that basically grow as many eggs as your like ovaries can at once. So that's what's happening. So you do this for like, I think I did it for a week and a half or something. Avery would give me the injections at first, and then I like think I started doing it myself.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you have to inject them, like into your stomach?
In your stomach, yeah, like around your uterus, I guess. And then once so you also have to go into the clinic like every day or every second day to get the vaginal ultrasound to like see how they're doing, how they're growing.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they're ready, you go in for the retrieval. But the like nerve-wracking part is that they give you this drug that you have, like it's an injection that you have to do the night before your retrieval. And basically what it does is it like signals your ovaries and your follicles to release the eggs so that they can go in and get them. But she's like, if you do this like at the wrong time, like it'll release, and then like I won't be able to get them, so you better do them like right at the right time. And I was like, oh my god, like that's so stressful.
That is so
Yeah.
And I remember I was so anxious. Like Avery gave me that one, and I remember he was like taking the medication out of the thing and like squirted a little out like before he put it in. I was like, oh my god, like no, you ruined the whole thing. Like
You said it a lot meaner than that. But...
Did I? I think I got mad.
Yeah.
So it was stressful. But then you go in for the retrieval, and what they do is they just give you fentanyl, which is great, but you're awake, but you're just like very loopy. And then they take a giant needle and they go through your uterus wall to your ovary, and they like suck out all the eggs like individually. So I remember at one point and this is such a weird thing. Like, I don't know if I remember this properly, but I remember being loopy and then her asking me, like, what's your favorite cocktail? And I was like, a martini. Like, not at all thinking that was a weird thing to ask me. And then,
She was just the perfect doctor. You know?
But then at one point I felt it. And I think I said, ow, or something, and like grabbed the table. And she was, I swear to God, she was like, give her another round, like another martini. And I was like, okay, I guess that's why she asked me.
Yeah.
But,
so maybe loopy is kind of nice.
Yeah.
You know, like a little bit of a weird doctor.
That's
She's loopy. Things are working out.
It was fun. It was like, I feel like she did do a good job. Like everything worked out, you know, and it's, overall, I mean, people I think can have bad experiences with like doing the hormonal drugs to like lead up to getting their retrieval. But I found it fine. Like it was definitely tolerable.
Did you have to do this before or during chemo?
before.
Oh, before, right. That
Did
would
I
make
do
sense
it?
because you
It was
don't.
before, yeah.
Yeah, that's the whole
I
point.
don't
Yeah,
remember.
right.
Yeah.
Don't listen to anything she
yeah.
says. She's got all the timelines wrong. That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here.
So I did it, and I got 10, which is great. They're in the freezer. You have to pay for the storage every year. So that's
Okay, I was about to say, like, are they in your freezer?
No.
No, I understand.
They're in their freezer, which also like freaks me out because it's like, what if they mix it up when you want to use them, or what if they like lose them, or like I don't know. It's like too much to trust someone else with, you know. I hate
Yeah.
that, but I'm paying them $200, $300 a year, so they better keep them.
Yeah, there's a rental fee for Desiree's 10 disciples.
Yeah.
So,
Wild.
yeah.
Yeah, but then so the other thing that came out of that was Avery getting a nice phone call.
Maybe I'll take it from here.
I'll just set up the atmosphere of the phone call. It was my best friend's, also roommate at the time's 30th birthday. So I was like getting the house ready with like balloons and like setting stuff up, and then in like 30 minutes we were all gonna like gather in the living room and like have a surprise happy birthday thing. So while I'm setting up the balloons, I just see Avery outside on the phone like pacing back and forth. I think just thought it was a work call or something.
I do pace. Yeah. Well, basically, I had to go do my testing too because they wanted to know the viability of each partner, because I guess that goes into play for I mean, it's funny because it shouldn't really at that point come into play because we weren't going to have a family like right away.
Right.
But they just do it at the same time because they want all the answers for when you do start your family planning. So I was asked to go jack off into the cup, and then they would tell me from that sample, you know, how many sperm I have, good to go, right? So through all this mishugas of everything, I'll use a good Yiddish word there, but of the whole cancer and everything, the focus was very heavily, obviously, on Desiree. And I got a phone call at work. I'm at the office. I'm there alone, thank God. And I get this call from the clinic, and I answer, and it's like, "Hi, Avery. Like, listen, I'm just calling because we got your results back, and it's not the news we were hoping for."
Oh my God.
And that was exactly how she said it. And I was like, "Oh, like, what's wrong?" And she's like, "Well, normally we see, you know, millions and billions of sperm, and for you, we found none."
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh.
No, you can laugh.
I
You
can't
can laugh. And I was like, my jaw dropped, and all of a sudden it was me, and I was just like,
But it's like, of course, this also
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
Like, I can't.
like, so I'm just like, oh, and her voice, fuck, it just killed me. And I was like, what do you mean, like, none? Like, I have no sperm? And she was like, well, no, we did. They spin the sperm basically to like find it, I guess. And they're like, when we spun it, we did actually find 3. And so in my head, I'm like, okay, like, all right, I made 3 sperm. Like, it's better than no sperm. And she's like, yeah, we found 3, but they were dead. They weren't moving.
Like 3 of them. You're supposed to have like millions, billions.
So I'm like, oh, great. I have 3 dead ones in me. That's awesome. So that began my medical journey in the midst of this. But I was just like, what? And I was like, what the fuck? So I'm like shell shocked, and the same way that you're confronted with the diagnosis with cancer, like it was kind of similar because it's like, I can't create life. Like now I can't have a family. Like how am I going to break this to Desiree? Like we've already been through so much. Like, what does this mean for me? Like, what's wrong with me? I got my own dose of like sort of the feeling of your body isn't working the way it should be. And when that happened, I was really nervous to tell you because like kind of felt like it was like worse than everything going on at that time because we were sort of getting through this cancer diagnosis together. And one of the things we were looking forward to was having a family. And like we were starting to actually talk about it more because you start, when you're confronted with a cancer diagnosis, you think about time and how, you know, one person might not have as much time as the other. And I remember you saying that to me, like, you know, I got to think about how much time I have here and having a family and stuff. So I was fucking devastated. And it was crazy because my mom had called me earlier and was like, what would you do if you found, like, as a hypothetical? And I was like, I wouldn't care. Like, it wouldn't be. And it just ruined me. Like, it just.
It's weird. Yeah, it's weird how that happens. You don't, because I remember when you told me.
Yeah.
In the midst of Kara's birthday.
Yeah.
And we were like upstairs. And it's weird because, yeah, I always was kind of like mentally, I was always kind of on the fence about it. Like, I wasn't like, oh my God, I need to have kids like now, you know? But then when you told me, it was immediately like, oh, we got to have kids. Like, right, we got to figure it out. Like, we got, like, it's so important. It did feel worse than the cancer diagnosis for sure.
Yeah.
And like, I remember immediately we started talking about like, okay, well, we could adopt, like, we could like, maybe we could get a sperm donor, like literally 5 minutes into like finding out this news.
You're just grasping.
We're like, yeah, we're like, we could do all these things, but.
And this is the news that you decided to break in the middle of this birthday party.
I can't hold anything.
Well, it was right. So it was
what
right.
What am I going to hold that in? Hey, I have 3 dead ones. I gotta keep that inside me for 24 hours. No way.
Was the party the same day as you finding out?
Yeah, it was literally like she was setting it up for her friend, and I just came home. I called a few people. I called my dad and my friends, and was just like, "Fuck! Like, what do I do?" And I also, being me, on the phone to her was like, could this be an anomaly? And she was like, it could. Like, you should probably come in and do the test again, but you know, it's probably unlikely that it's a mistake. And I was like, I'm coming in tomorrow. Like, I'm giving you as many samples as you need. Like, this can't be real, right? Like, there's no way that this is happening on top of everything we've been through. And so yeah, I came home and I told you, and
he told me, so it was like right before we were going to do the birthday surprise. We were like upstairs in his room having this like emotional breakdown and like talking about our options. And then I was like, okay, well, we got to do the birthday now. So we like came downstairs and like did the birthday. And then, but like, luckily, I mean, we were very close with all of our like roommates. So I think we just ended up like telling everyone like what was going on.
Yeah.
And it was kind of just like, you know, it is funny because it's so shocking. Like, it's like.
It felt like being in a bad comedy movie. And like, you're like, okay, I'm probably going to come out of this maybe, but I don't know. It was a lot to deal with, to be like confronted with infertility because of the breast cancer. Mm-hmm. But it's a good thing.
Well, it was a blessing.
It's a blessing in disguise because through the processes that I had to go to figure out whether or not I'm fertile, there, like, that would have happened later on in life anyways. And
well, that's the thing. When at the time that we actually would have started trying to have kids, like, would probably be in our like now or like mid 30s. And then we'd have to like go through that whole process. So it would just like delay things even more.
And my diagnosis took 9 months too. Yeah, but I basically went back. I did another test. They told me that it was the same results and that they would have to run all these other tests, but like it wasn't looking good. And then I started getting really annoyed with the doctor because every time I'd come in, she'd be like, "It's okay, we'll get you a sperm donor." Like, as if that was just like a given. And like, you know, or, you know, she didn't want us to adopt. She really wanted a sperm donor.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I had to do my own dildo tests. Mm-hmm. I had to do some rectum probes. I had to do a lot of balls ultrasounds.
And you had a biopsy.
And then finally I had my own biopsy.
No way.
Yeah, like, I mean, there were so many things. It was the same thing. It was just like the genetics. We got to figure out, like, are you missing a chromosome or have a chromosome or whatever?
That's like the worst case scenario is if it's like a genetic thing, because then they're like, oh, like,
then you can't
have kids because then you're going to pass it on to them.
Yeah. So yeah, there was that. And then like are you missing some tubing or vas deferens, like all this stuff. And I did a lot of tests, and then finally I got referred to a specialist, because I also went through the same thing where I was just like, I need a second opinion on this, like, and she wasn't really the right person because she more specialized in female fertility. So I finally saw a specialist after like 6 months of thinking I was not going to be able to reproduce, confronting a lot of things about what that meant for us moving forward. I thought you'd like dump me, but like,
No.
I mean, but you have to consider that, right?
Well, I
That,
thought
like,
that about the cancer too, though. I was like, who's gonna want to like go through all this shit? Like,
yeah,
you know,
a guy who's infertile, that too.
Yeah, but you didn't know you were.
I know.
Match made in heaven.
Yeah, but no, I mean, I feel so badly for people who, guys, you know, I'm sure a lot of guys go through this, and it's scary, and it makes you, I don't know, it makes you question your body or your manhood and like all this different stuff, and there's a lot of like toxicness wrapped in that. But the ultimate finding was that I went and got a biopsy, and they biopsied me, and the result is that I do have sperm. I have normal like sperm cores, and I guess I have lots of sperm, but they just can't get out. So there's some blockage, and that blockage wasn't revealed on any of the scans. It's like tough for them to figure it out. So I have to go get a surgery for them to find the blockage and then fix the blockage. And then also at the same time, they'll pull sperm out of my testicle, so that if we want to do IVF, we likely can. But yeah, I on the day that I found out that it was I mean, they still don't know. I still don't have like a clear diagnosis, right? But I just know that I do have sperm. It's just trapped somewhere. So
one way or another, you could do IVF if you guys had to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Hopefully. I mean, you know, but I jumped for joy on that day. Like, I got that phone call, and it was funny because of how much we were dealing with doctors at that time, that as soon as I got the phone call, I could just tell with the tone, and I was just like fist pumping in the kitchen.
Well, I think like the assistant called you or something.
Yeah.
It wasn't even the doctor, so you were like, okay, this is probably good news.
I forget what I was saying, but I was like, I can bust. Like, I can do it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna bust.
But it is weird how like situations like that will just reveal like knowings that you don't consciously know. Like you saying like, oh, I thought you'd break up with me. Like in that moment, immediately 100% I knew that I wasn't going to break up with you. You know what I mean? So it's like you realize what you can get through, and you realize how strong your relationship is. And that's probably not the case for a lot of people. Like it probably does cause.
It could probably also very easily go the other way.
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
Like, I'm not really trying to deal with all this.
I mean, we had been in a relationship for like what, 5-6 years when you got diagnosed. So like we were pretty solid.
Yeah.
But like all this shit that you go through, like we'll test you and we'll, you know, reveal how you problem solve and how you handle conflict and adversity. And, you know, I think we both handled it differently, but we handled it together. We just communicated really well throughout the whole process. Like there was never any unanswered questions except for one thing. And that was sex.
Oh, yeah.
Ah, yes. The big S.
The big S.
Yeah, so like what, like did you have a sex drive while you were, I guess, was it different before and after chemo? Like what was that like?
So there's a lot wrapped up into this because there was one particular side effect that I experienced from the chemo that like really affected our sex life. And
your life.
And my life, yeah. I wouldn't necessarily say that it affected like my sex drive, because it was more just my like physical well-being. But basically what happened is when I was doing chemo, I voluntarily opted to do a drug that shuts down your ovaries. So basically you stop producing estrogen. Like you go to like 0, which is less than if you go through menopause. When you're going through menopause, you still have some estrogen. But when you do this drug, you literally go to like 0. So, and I had just kind of found out about this option like through my own research. It wasn't really something that my doctors like brought up to me, but they were like, okay, like if you want to do it, like you can. But also no one, like they were just like, okay, well if you don't like it, you can just go off. But no one told me about the severity of like the side effects. And like I was not clear on that at all.
And your fertility doctor, like didn't really run you through all this,
No.
you know.
No.
And I mean, at that point, we were a little sick of her too, so it's probably also
Yeah.
Was the fertility doctor aware that you were taking the
Yeah.
estrogen blocker? Okay.
Yeah. But I went through a different doctor to like get prescribed it and stuff. So basically, and this is it is kind of like an experimental thing too. They don't have tons of data on like how well it works, but I just wanted to take like every precaution possible. So I opted to take this drug. And
I'm sorry. So if it shut down your ovaries, how did that help?
because chemo targets rapidly growing cells, your ovaries are like part, because you're producing eggs, so it could go target there.
Yeah.
Right. So if it's shut down, it's not attacking. It doesn't need to go there. Okay.
Exactly. That's like the methodology behind it.
Got
Yeah,
it.
the thinking.
And you wanted to preserve your ovaries in a way that we could naturally have children.
Yeah.
It was another thing too, because I think
Right.
we also were unclear on the IVF and the money that was involved with. I mean, there's still money involved with that. Like,
Yeah.
and so we were trying to, if we could still have a kid naturally, like we wanted to have that option to do it.
Yeah.
So, and that drug was just like a monthly injection, and basically what it is, which is weird, is it like injects this thing into you that slowly releases over a month. So yeah, basically I was like slammed into menopause, and even worse. So there's like crazy side effects that come from that, like insane hot flashes, like sweating where I'm visibly have like water droplets on me. And I would have these hot flashes like 10 to 15 times a day.
Like waterfall
And the way,
hot flashes.
Yeah. And the way that they start is you feel like you're going to have a panic attack, like you can't breathe for like 30 seconds, and then that goes away, and then you have like an insane like hot flash and prickles and like whatever, night sweating. So that's like one thing. But it also, because you're not making estrogen, it kind of opens up that area to like infections, and chemo also does that. It lowers your immune system. So because of like the combination of all these things happening, I got a really bad UTI one day where I was at home alone. It came on super fast and it was like horrifying. Like I went to the washroom and it was like blood and like chunks. I don't know what it was, like pus or like flesh. Like I don't know what the fuck was happening.
Just tell them everything.
Yeah. But like some shit was going on. I was like, okay, this is really bad. I was in like so much pain. Felt like I had to pee like crazy, wouldn't go away. So I like had to like call my doctor and get a prescription over the phone. Avery was golfing, I think.
Oh,
so
great.
I had to do all of this on my own.
Wow, this guy went golfing once.
It's fine. It's fine. It's just I remember hobbling to the like pharmacy like down the street and like then sitting in there. They didn't have it ready. I had to wait. I was like, oh my God, like I literally feel I'm gonna piss my pants like on the floor in this place. Like I need to get out of here. So I like got the medication, came home and took it. And my doctor actually prescribed me like the wrong one, which so it worked. It just wasn't like a long acting antibiotic. It was more of just like treat it right now. But this was my family doctor. So my like cancer doctors were like, oh yeah, we would have prescribed you something else. Like, so basically it definitely cured it. But I think I was kind of having reoccurring like UTIs for a while. They never got that bad, but like it was just like not really solving itself. And then I was having major anxiety because when you start researching about UTIs, you go down this whole rabbit hole of like, well, you can't keep taking antibiotics because then like your body will become resistant and then like you'll just keep getting them forever. And there's like stories of people just getting UTIs forever their whole life. And I'm like, oh my God, like literally this is like horrifying. So yeah, so eventually I was like doing a lot of UTI tests and nothing was coming up on them. It was like showing that I didn't have any bacteria or whatever. So I was like, what is going on? Because I still on a daily basis felt like extreme discomfort. Like it felt like I had to pee all the time for this lasted months. It was like, and I can't really explain.
Like 5 to 6 months.
Mm-hmm. And I can't really, like, this was the worst thing that happened in the whole cancer experience for sure, because I can't explain what it's like to be in that much, like, physical discomfort. You literally can't live your life. Like, I started to really empathize with people that deal with, like, chronic pain and stuff, because I couldn't like deal. Like I'm not like I've never like contemplated suicide or anything like that in my like normal life. But I remember there was days where I was just like, I like can't do if I have to deal with this, like I can't. Like
Yeah.
I need to just die because I cannot deal with this. So I was going through all of that. And then Avery was dealing with lack of sexual attention.
And lack
Because
of
my
cum. I had no
vagina
cum.
was
So.
completely fucked up. And yeah. So
But you were so it was actually mind-boggling because she had been so strong and like resilient through everything else. And then this just like this sequence of like me with my infertility and then her with the UTIs and the drug, like that just toppled us. All of a sudden it was like we were living with the real side effects of, I mean, I wasn't. I mean, I was living with something else, but
Yeah.
you were living with the real side effects for the first time of the chemo, and it was the first time that it felt like it really actually did uproot something that was very stable and good in our lives.
yeah.
That was still in our control throughout the whole thing.
It was a major point of contention for us because like I'm sure I was insufferable because I couldn't stop talking about it like every single day. I was just talking about how much pain
my
I was in.
My bladder, yeah.
And I couldn't, I mean, the worst thing about it is that I couldn't get diagnosed with anything. Like I went to a urologist. I literally had a camera up my pee hole to like see if anything was wrong. Everything looked completely normal. He was just like, "Oh, the medical system can't do anything for you. You have just like skin sensitivity inside your bladder."
Yeah, go see a naturopath.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
No one had any, it was crazy. No one had any answers, and we were like, other people must have gone through this,
Yeah,
right?
I couldn't find anything. Like it was super, I think it was just like really uncommon or some weird
just like a bizarre side
reaction.
effect of this drug. Yeah.
Exactly. So I could like I stopped like eating everything because every single thing I ate would like make it feel worse, and like
sugar in particular.
Yeah, sugar, but like I felt like I was in a prison because I couldn't do anything fun. Obviously, I couldn't like drink or like let loose in any way, and I'm just like constantly in pain. And another thing that I was experiencing was because I was on this medication that like puts you into menopause, I was literally experiencing like vaginal atrophy, which is like where your vagina like dies, and like literally it felt like just dust and like cobwebs. Like that's how I would like mentally visualize it.
And that was the side effect from that drug.
From
right?
that drug.
From the drug that shuts the ovaries
Yeah,
off.
exactly. And even just like mentally and emotionally, I was like feeling like just like less like a woman, you know? And it's weird how much your femininity is like hinged on your hormones, but like
your estrogen.
It's literally like all it is your estrogen. And I remember just feeling like I didn't even like know myself anymore. Like it was like a real mind fuck. Like it was so weird. But so that was like, I was thinking about that a lot. I was like, yeah, this is like, I don't like this. Like, this is like really weird. I like don't feel like a woman. So I'm like dealing with all of this. It's like mental, it's physical, it's like everything. And so I wasn't in the best place to be having sex. I was also just really paranoid that having sex would like give me another UTI.
Were you guys having sex throughout everything until this happened?
Yeah, I think like pretty normally.
I mean, yeah, like as much as you would like want to have sex, like
Right.
you know, obviously after the surgery and stuff, like you couldn't have sex, and like even the initial diagnosis, we were all, you know, you're shocked, but yeah, like it was still something that we could like rely on. Like we had a good, healthy, strong sex life, and like that, it was just so many things were being changed, and like I said, like uprooted, and that was sort of like something that I took for granted, and maybe you took for granted, was just that like the sex was a big part of our relationship and a part of our closeness, and like even just like touching and like back scratching and like, you know, foreplay, it all ties into it of how you interact together as a couple, right? Like we'd be, you know, just watching movies and cuddling and stuff, and then all of a sudden it was like this, what I call, it was like an emotional and like physical, sexual, sensual faucet that, you know, you turn on, and it was like that part of you is part of who you are, and it's like part of the relationship. And when that was not present for probably like 3 months,
Yeah.
which in retrospect is like,
It was.
bro, like, come on, 3 months.
So I remember you asking me the first time we sat down, you were like, so like how long without sex, like, do you think Avery started like freaking out or whatever? And I was like, yeah, I literally think it was like weeks. Like it was like 2 weeks or
And
something.
Avery's like, it was mine.
Yeah.
No, for once, I'll concede. You were right on that timeline.
Yeah.
It was probably like 2 weeks, or at least I just thought that like there
Wait,
was.
so it was just 2 weeks?
No. Like we went 3 months without having sex.
Okay.
But like
by week 2 or 3 or 4, probably week 2, I was like, hey, what's going on here? Like, can we have sex? Or like, you know, is there sex in the future? Are we going to attempt sex? Where's the sex? Is basically how I was.
So I think what's interesting about this is that me and him were kind of going through the same thing, but differently. Because I was thinking, this physical experience that I'm having is my reality. It's never going to end. I'm just like stuck like this forever. I don't know how I'm going to survive. And Avery was thinking, this is my reality. I'm never going to have sex again. I'm just a celibate man.
How will I survive?
And we're going to break up because you basically told me that we would break up if we
there
didn't
was no
have sex again.
forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Like,
but that really, and I know that it was just like a connection thing. It's like you were just like really wanted to connect.
Yeah, it wasn't
just
sex.
But for me, that like really mind fucked me because I was going through all of this, and then I started thinking like, oh, like my only worth is like sex.
Oh,
like,
great.
what if something happens to me? What if I'm like permanently damaged and I can't have sex? Like, then I'm also alone because I can't, because you can't deal with that. So it was complex.
Look, it seems like when we talk about it, and like I feel like a little shame and guilt around it because it is like, come on, bro, like it's not.
You talk to your therapist about it a lot.
A lot. I talked to my therapist about it a lot. I talked about how to bring it up. I talked about how to not seem like I was just some shitty dude. Like, but it wasn't just the sex. It was just like how we would feel close to each other and be so strong in our relationship, and like we fit together good. Like I took it for granted, I feel like, for a long time because it's such a natural thing. It's something that, you took for granted that you had done for your whole adult life, and specifically like with your partner of 5-6 years. And I just started feeling like starved of this connectivity, and it it challenged me like severely.
Yeah, so this is the interesting part about you guys being in a relationship while you're going through this, because if we didn't know Des and we didn't know the whole story, it is very understandable that for 3 months of not having sex and losing the connection and all of that is a very real problem that you're dealing with. It's just that in the context of her problems, it becomes this awkward thing to have to discuss. So it's just an interesting conversation from the perspective of like you're in a relationship and both of you have valid issues you're dealing with, one of which is kind of overshadowing the other.
Yeah, and it wasn't like I didn't understand what you were going through, and it wasn't that I couldn't like I obviously wasn't gonna like leave you if we couldn't have sex. I think I was just trying to say that like it was really important to me that like you knew that it was something that I needed.
Yeah.
And something
Right.
that like I valued in our relationship. And I just felt like you didn't need it in the same way that I did because obviously you couldn't.
Generally, I also don't need it like you do.
Hey.
but I feel like
that's a different podcast, okay?
We're not shaming you for that.
But I do think that this experience like made me value it more than I did before. Like for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah, there was a lot to it. Like there was so there was the drug. There was also like, you had some hair loss, like you lost your eyebrows and your eyelashes, and you felt like you were a dusty museum down there. But meanwhile, I'm like this like pent up, horny devil who is now infertile and also like has some self-loathing about that. And like I'm seeing you, and you think you're this like disgusting creature golem of a woman, but to me you're still like the hottest thing in the world, and like I'm just like, when are we gonna get back to normal? Because at this time it was like 9 months down the line of everything, and I was starting to become a little bit more sensitive to my needs after that long period of putting you at above all, and everything we were going through above all, and also my diagnosis or my issues sort of took a little bit away from that, and I was thinking about me and stuff. So there was like this like shift in the needs, and it was irritating because it just like didn't make sense, and it just like didn't make sense why you had it. It didn't make sense what would stop it, when it would go away. And then even when we did start having sex, because you were like, "Hey, I'm gonna make the effort, or he's gonna die," you then had another side effect of not being able to fully have an orgasm.
Oh yeah.
Which was even more infuriating to me, where it was like, we finally get to have sex, and now I can't even help you come. Like, fuck. Like,
oh, poor Avery.
Yeah, poor me. Can you believe it?
I think I also was feeling a little bit of like resentment, probably because Avery has a history of dealing with people with medical issues. And I feel like because of that, he's maybe a little like desensitized to it.
Yeah. Like
so
my family, immediate family.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I already knew that. And like, I could tell that just by like me always talking about it. Like I was just desperate for someone to like validate what I was going through, because I was completely alone and I couldn't make someone understand what it was like and how bad it was. And I just kind of felt like because of his history, he kind of would just like dismiss it. So, and like, I don't blame you. I think the hardest thing in the world is to try to understand someone else's like physical pain. Like it's impossible. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think I was also just like feeling that like resentment too. But I don't know. We got through it. We like rented a beach house like 2 hours away and went in COVID because we couldn't like actually go anywhere or anything. And yeah, I remember it being like really awkward because I felt like I was on like a first date or something again, because I don't know. It was like, yeah, but also because we haven't had sex in like 3 months, I feel like there was like a weird connection like missing. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, what do we even talk about? Like we're on a first date. Like, I don't know. This is so weird and awkward.
Is that how you felt, Avery?
I don't know. It was really special for us to get away because, like, there's no travel in this time. And also travel was a big part of our relationship and having new experiences. So just to like drive like 2 hours out of the city and have our own place. And we live with roommates, so we're never like alone. Right. That was really like, it was special to me. And I was that the first time that we had sex? Like in
my memory, I don't know if it actually was, but
it's more cinematic, so let's do it. So yeah, like I remember we were like, what should we do? What should we watch? So we like, there was 2 couches, so we smushed them together, made what we called a couch house, and then we just like hung out and like ate cheese in it and chocolate and hung out, and I think we even had some wine. It was like, we were like trying to have a breakthrough, and then we just like put on The Notebook, which like if you've just been through a really traumatic relationship experience that where one of your livelihoods is threatened and the other partner might die, it's a really tough movie to get through. But yeah, we just watched that movie and we just fucking bawled like together.
Like you guys just cried.
It was just like it was the culmination of everything was The Notebook, and we just watched that movie and we just cried, and I was just like, I love you so much. Like I was so worried about losing you, and like we had a tender moment, and we had lots of moments throughout it, but you have to remove yourself from everything and take some time and just watch the fucking Notebook, and we were just finally like being open about like all the frustrations and things that we were having around the sex and the lack of connection and intimacy.
And I think I was starting to feel a bit better, like a little bit better, even though I still to this day like it will flare up, and never like it's like to a extreme low compared to what it was at, but like I think I was starting to feel maybe a tiny bit better at that time.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, like, okay, it wasn't just sex; it was intimacy, and I wanted to say that before. Is like that was also what I realized too was that I was missing was just like the touching and the kissing and like because like we weren't doing that also.
I was in a mental prison.
Yeah.
My day-to-day was waking up and thinking like, how am I going to survive this day? It wasn't like I couldn't think about someone else and their needs,
So after that, then, you started feeling a little bit better. it was like the drug was wearing off.
Well, I
and-
stopped taking it early. I was supposed to take it for like the whole chemo cycle. And after 2 months, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah, and your fertility doctor was like, I don't think you need to be on this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, then that took like another 6 months to get out of your system.
Mm-hmm.
And then you were on a heart medication because of the chemo that you had to be on. And that was what was blocking you from having an orgasm,
Yeah.
which you found out.
I didn't realize it was that. I thought it was just like...
Yeah, all randomly. She just like... Because what were you taking that heart medication for?
So one of the side effects of Herceptin is that it can affect your heart. It's pretty common. Like 50% of people will get like a heart complication from it.
And Herceptin is what they give you in tandem with chemo when you have
like the positive HER.
Yes,
yeah.
the HER2. Yeah.
So they refer you to a cardiologist to like monitor that, and it did end up having like affecting my heart. So they put me on for like a year. I was on this heart medication. I'm off of it now, but
blood thinner, right?
No, it's not a blood thinner. Oh. I don't know exactly what it does, but so I was on that, and I was having just like weird, like very like, and I've always been, sorry if it's TMI, but like I haven't really had problems like orgasming. It's always been pretty easy for me. But I
just want to point out that like you thinking that this is the TMI part of the discussion is like how often you orgasm. It's wild, but okay.
It just shows you though, like the taboo around.
Exactly.
Around
yeah,
this.
That's true. Yeah. So yeah, like I'm lucky. It's been always very easy for me. But then yeah, like during all of this, it was just like and then I started to like be able to have them again, but then they would just be like really weird and like incomplete, and like I would have to like use my vibrator for like 10 minutes and be like, what is going on? Like this is so weird. I'm just having like 10 half orgasms, like very
we'd have sex and then the vibrator would have to come into play. Like as if it wasn't
Avery.
Again,
this is really the takeaway from this podcast.
Again, poor me.
Yeah. And then I was like, okay, well it's definitely just like from that hormone drug, or like when I stopped doing chemo, I had to start another hormone drug that I'm still on, but I was like, it's definitely from that or something. And then I kind of just like came to terms with it, and then I went off the heart medication and everything like went back to normal, and I was like, oh, that's so weird, like it was from that.
And it was the best day of my fucking life.
It's still not completely normal because I still deal with the bladder stuff a bit, and it's more now like if I eat certain foods, like it'll flare up, and then it affects sex too. Like it's all just kind of like intermingled down there. So
yeah.
So how long have you been off chemo? Like when did you finish that?
So I finished it in November 2020. So after that I had to do radiation. So radiation was every day for a month. You have to go. And basically they just like zap radiation into your boob for 2 minutes a day. So I had to go do that for a month. So I did that in January of like 2021. And then after that, they put you on like a hormonal drug. So it's a similar thing to the one I was on before, where it controls your estrogen. But instead of like stopping your estrogen production, it basically goes in and collects your estrogen and like deposits it into your uterus, which is really weird. So people it actually puts you at a higher risk for like uterine cancer, because
wonderful.
Yeah. Because it's doing that, but it's way better. Like I barely feel side effects on it.
How long do you have to be on it?
It's like either 5 to 10 years is what they say. I think 5 years is most common, but you can like stop it to have kids, because if you have kids on it, like it'll have like birth defects. So you can stop and have kids. Like I'm almost at my 2-year mark. So this is like when the oncologist said that I could stop if I wanted to start.
Why do you need to take it? Like what does it do?
So because my cancer was estrogen positive.
Right. Yes.
It like basically it stops estrogen from circulating around my body.
And you have all your hair back. I mean, you had your hair the whole time.
Yeah.
But you have eyebrows and
My
eyelashes.
eyebrows have grown back. Yeah.
Yeah. How long did that take?
I don't think it was very long, actually. I think like right after I stopped doing the chemo, it pretty much like grew back in.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your hair, you really, I mean, it got thinner, but you had a
I
full head of
lost
hair.
like this hair down here, like right at the bottom of my like neck. I lost all this hair. So like it's shorter.
Because the cold
Can't
cap
really
didn't reach there.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
So you can see like it's a lot shorter than all my other hair, but it was like none. And then it was just like tiny little hairs for a while.
And it like came out like a different color.
Well, so there's like a thing called chemo curl, is when you like lose all your hair from chemo. A lot of the time it grows back darker and curly, which is so
Wow.
weird. But and like this hair did, it's like darker and curlier than my hair.
You know what also is crazy about chemo that I didn't know is that like chemo is from like a naturally occurring plant.
I don't think all of it, but mine specifically.
Yeah, hers
Yeah.
was, yeah, it's from it's some
Tree bark.
It's tree bark, yeah.
What?
I know.
Yeah. They would like use it as a poison.
Because technically it is like a poison that's
poison.
killing certain types of cells, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
rapidly
That's
growing.
wild.
But yeah, I always thought that it was some man-made,
Mhm.
and I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's not just like you boil some tree bark and there's your chemo, but
Yeah.
it
That's what they're doing.
but it
back
was
there.
Imagine.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was sort of interesting to think about it in that way, that it is coming from like a natural substance, because
Mhm.
you think of chemo as just like you're drinking Lysol. Or
It like made
something.
me feel better in a way. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of that, though, have you changed anything about? Because like I guess it's really nerve wracking that you don't actually know why you got cancer, meaning that it's probably environmental. So like, what are some things? Did you change anything?
Yeah, I mean, when I got diagnosed, I changed basically everything that I was doing. We like immediately started eating organic. We like literally went to the grocery store like I think the same day as like I got diagnosed, and we like fully just started eating organic. We went crazy for a while, like super healthy, like didn't eat out. I stopped eating gluten, which actually is crazy. Through that, I found out that I'm like gluten intolerant, and I was having all these stomach issues, and it like completely resolved them. So that was a nice thing that happened.
A positive.
Yes. But I like switched all my shampoos and stuff to like natural shampoos, all my makeup.
No deodorant.
I didn't drink for probably a year or something, like for a while, which is hard. Yeah, no deodorant. And like those things, I think that's what's hard to deal with just on like a longevity basis, is like, how much do I need to restrict myself? Like, I still need to live my life.
Right.
I've returned back to normal in a lot of ways. Like, I eat, we probably eat healthier than maybe we did before.
Yeah.
But I still eat out, and I don't watch it like that crazy. I like drink again, and I use normal makeup again, like some of it. Like I feel like I've just kind of gone back like halfway, right? Because I do think like swinging to one extreme, like for me, that was just like not something that I could keep up for an extended period of time. And it's about like quality of life too. Like you still want to be able to live your life and feel free, because that was really hard. Like restricting myself constantly, I just felt like I was in a prison. I would watch everyone around me just like living their lives normally, and I didn't feel like I could do that. So, yeah, I feel like it's just kind of like...
Yeah, that was a big thing for you.
Yeah,
was
that was like
even
so
just being
hard.
around other people and like seeing them, like book their weddings and
like make plans.
Yeah,
like your life just stops. You can't do anything because you're just like now in the system of like getting treatment. So that was really hard to deal with, especially at our age too, because like it's a big time in people's lives. People are like doing a lot of things and traveling and working and like whatever.
But now you guys are doing a lot of things, because then you went and traveled, and then you got engaged, so you did all the things.
Exactly. It's true. It's so hard to like see out of your situation when you're in it. Like
Of
you just
course.
think that it's going to be like your reality, but everything has pretty much gone back to normal. And I do feel like I was thinking about it today, because I was like reviewing everything that we had talked about and stuff before. And like, it's just crazy, because I do feel like in a lot of ways, I'm probably a different person than I was before. I know that I'm better at managing my stress. That's like number one.
I think we're both more sympathetic to people who are going through, health battles.
Yeah.
Regardless of their age, but specifically young people. I mean, we felt like the reason we're doing this is because we felt like these stories aren't out there.
Right.
They should be. I think it's probably more common than anyone would hope that it was to be, to get diagnosed with cancer in your 20s. Testicular and breast cancer are the most common for young people, and it impacts you in a lot of ways. And when we were trying to find support, and like I didn't find any support, like I didn't find any guys going through their partner having breast cancer and B having infertility issues. Like it's just not something that you want to think about when you're this age, or that you want to deal with, and you feel like you're kind of like a weight on everyone that you tell, and
oh yeah, for sure.
And like you don't want to do that. But the reality is like I don't know, I hope, but I think that our generation, we're going to see a lot of this, and I don't know why, and I wish it wasn't the case, but like these rates are going up, not down. So it's like we should talk about this more, and young people should be aware of this more, because even though you waited, 4 months longer than you probably should have, and we're lucky that wasn't detrimental in that delay, but like you didn't take it as seriously in the beginning,
I didn't take it as seriously, and also like you're not you don't get access to mammograms until you're like 50 years old. So it's like if anything happens up to age 50, like you better find it on your own, or else, it could get really bad. So like it's important to be aware of that and just be like checking,
Yeah, checking and on it, and advocate for yourself. That was the biggest thing that we learned, I feel like, is that like nobody is going to advocate for you. No one is going to push you into the best care except for yourself and maybe your partner. And it's hard. Like, you have to tell as many people, and we have to tell these stories, because when people are going to go through this, there might be a reluctance or the feeling of it's just easier to follow the system of medical experiences. And we're talking about being in one of the most blessed countries to have this in. Like, the stories we're going to hear from all over the world are going to be drastically different.
Right.
And I think the same rings true, where we're lucky that we could even get a second opinion, and that we could get this free healthcare. Like that alone is a privilege. But I'm sure whatever position you're in, you want to hear that you need to take action for your health. And I think it goes with everything.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have if it wasn't for you. So
yeah,
you helped me in that way.
Well, you couldn't think.
No, exactly. It was just I was so overwhelmed.
Yeah, you weren't in a position where you were just going to jump into it. You needed someone in your corner who would go out and do that. And we don't have, our family is all over the country. So like it's just us here, and like we didn't have our parents to
my mom
lean
came
on.
for a while to just help, like during when I was in chemo. But
yeah, that's another thing, right? Is like, being abroad or without your family, like it's tough. Like there's lots of stories of people doing this alone who don't have partners, and I don't know how they do it, but they do.
But I think that it would be great to see more support groups. Like I really love because where did your like the gloves and the feet like freezing things, where did those end up?
So I got those from a Facebook group, and then I passed it on to someone else. So it was someone that I met in the clinic, because when you're going like weekly, you see the same people that are also getting treatment. So, and it's funny because you can kind of like spot the new people and, the more seasoned people. So there was one girl that she was newer. So I kind of started talking to her on one of her first appointments. And then I ended up passing on the gloves and the feet things to her. But yeah, like that support group was really, like, I would recommend anyone that's going through this. It's specifically for young women. And I think they classify that up to like 45 or something. It's not like 30s. But it's called Rethink, and they have a lot of initiatives, but like one of their main things is a Facebook group, and it's a closed Facebook group. So you have to like send them a message or something to like get into it. But they let you in if you're, I didn't have to like give any proof or anything. I think they just want to like make sure you're a real person. But in there, and it's also like, I do feel like it's important to be ready to go into those support groups, because you're gonna see a lot of people dumping their feelings, you know, and their experiences. So like it's a lot of people obviously looking for answers to problems. So they're, you know, it can be kind of heavy, I guess. But it also is an amazing resource to just like connect with other people that are like going through the same thing and find answers to things. You know, if you're experiencing something, chances are there's someone in there that also is going through the same thing. So that was a really huge one. And I did a lot of other support groups too.
Well, like, to your point about, like, you don't know how people do it alone. Like, you guys had each other and you still found so much value in support groups.
Mm-hmm.
And I think along the lines of, like, us doing this talk, it's about, like, creating community and, like, in general, like, community awareness of what happens before, during, after cancer, and how, like, people can be there for each other, but also how to not be a burden on somebody who is going through cancer,
Mm-hmm.
and how to actually provide support.
I think that's an important point, because I think for me, the one thing that like I really walked away with and like learned that I could give any advice to someone that's like supporting someone in this situation is that a lot of times you don't need like an answer to a problem. The biggest thing is just feeling validated. Because if you don't feel validated, you feel very alone. And I think just someone acknowledging like, oh yes, you're going through something very hard, and like, I'm here for you if you need anything, is sometimes more effective than like, how can I solve this problem for you? Yeah.
That was me.
I think
that was me for like a lot of things.
No, I mean, but you did so many amazing things for me. I couldn't have gotten through it without you. But like, that was just the hardest thing for me to deal with, was going through something and feeling like it's like made up or it's fake because no one else is experiencing it except for me. You know?
But also your personality is the type that if she's going through something, you want to solve that for her.
Mm-hmm.
And like, sometimes you're aware of the fact that like maybe the solution just doesn't exist right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm someone who's like, there's always a yes to this.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a correct solve.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if a problem started, something caused it, and it should be able to be remedied, was sort of my mindset throughout the whole thing. Even like trying to figure out like what caused the cancer, like that was, I ruminated on that for months. I still think about it, like what caused this, and the answer is you're never going to know. And it's probably irrelevant to the overall quality of your life, because that's not something that you need to know to live happily. So and to get through it. But for me, I found that lots of people, specifically like my male friends, like how they gave support was all very different. Like, one of my friends was very prompt on calling me a lot, and I loved that. That was like what I needed, you know, just checking in. And I would tell him that there were certain appointments for her coming up, and that friend would just be like, hey, how'd this appointment go? Or what's the news, you know?
That's great.
Another friend like couldn't really be there in that way, or was, but like wouldn't dig deep enough. But we were struggling with some of the finances of this, and they offered to help. And like, that was equally as important and huge, and was like really clutch to help us out. And, you know, there's different ways that you can be there. Like, even if you just want to buy someone dinner, or like whatever, like just make someone's life a little easier and show you're thinking about them. Like, that's the best way to support. It's not, you know, or connections, like, you know, what my cousin did, right? Like with the oncologist that he knew. Like, it every bit helps. To Desiree's point, it doesn't need to be solving or figuring out an answer to a problem. It can just be saying, hey, I'm here for you in this way, and this is my capacity for being here for you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I really love what you said at the start about like, tell everyone.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what kind of support you're going to be able to have. And even just in the like last little bit of us talking to people about this podcast, the amount of people that were like, no, I know somebody, or I went through it. And like, the best example is somebody I spoke with recently. He's an older man, and he said, middle-aged, I don't want to offend him. He basically said that he was going through cancer, and he didn't like really know who to turn to. Like, he was just kind of going through it. And he liked to watch hockey a lot. So he was at a hockey game, and a coach came up to him and said, like, I heard, you know, what you're dealing with, and then shook his hand and said, like, welcome to the club. And he was like, he felt like this huge weight lifted off him, because he was like, oh, I'm not alone. Like, there's a whole community of people on the other side of this. And I just feel like we should do a better job of telling people that there is another side of this before they even get there.
Yeah, I mean, one of the first things that we did when she got diagnosed was go to a bookstore, because we were just like, I wanted to read anything that could provide answers.
Yeah.
But I was looking for some kind of guide on how to get through this. And it was crazy because there was nothing in terms of the dealing with it, the emotions. There was lots of like
cookbooks,
yeah, and like you know, how to change your style of mental living to help you with your cancer diagnosis, or how to accept that you might die, like things like that. But there wasn't anything that was just like something that I could
there's nothing for like caregivers or like support people.
Yeah, for sure. There was lots for people who had it, but yeah, to find a community.
But there also wasn't really like a firsthand like experience type of content, you know? It was just like, and also just being young, like again, that there's really not much out there for that, and it really can make you feel alone. Just the young part
like,
of it.
Even the people who like when we did the cold caps, like someone like got on a Zoom, was super nice of them, like a husband who had like done this for his wife, but you know, he's like 55 years old, like, you know, it wasn't like there was another 29-year-old guy who's like, yo bro, fuck, here, this is what you do. Or you wrap this shit. They're like kids were like screaming in the back, so there's just this little like, and I mean that on its own is its own tragedy and stuff, of
course.
But yeah, I think you feel like you have this tragedy bomb that you're carrying with you at all times, and whoever you tell, boom, here's my tragedy.
Yeah.
Like, how are you going to react to that? Some people are, you can just see the energy being drained out of them while you tell them this.
Yeah.
Whereas other people, you can see the love coming into them, and that they just want to like squeeze you. But you know, you don't need to feel guilty about that you are dropping this trauma bomb. I trauma bombed everybody. Like, I was messaging people that like I hadn't talked to in like literally 20 years, like people I went to like daycare with, and I was like, hey, I heard you're a doctor now, motherfucker, like what goes on here, like listen to this shit, like help me. You know, and like
that's so good.
Yeah, and you're desperate in the beginning. You're so desperate in the beginning. You don't know what to do. You're just free falling. But just yell the whole way down.
Yeah.
Because someone will hear you, and someone will push you to, you know, make a more informed or better decision, or give you some kind of comfort.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, one of the ways that I dealt with like feeling alone, and this is definitely not for everyone, and it was definitely a coping mechanism at the time, because in hindsight, like, it's funny, I don't know if I would do it the same, but I like posted a lot on social media. So, but it was actually a really great way to kind of keep people in the loop with what was going on in my treatment without having to constantly like be texting individual people all the time about it, because you don't really want to talk about it all the time, you know? Like, you have to relive those experiences every time you talk about it to some extent. So it was nice to kind of have an outlet to just like share what was going on with people without having to constantly talk about it. Yeah.
I honestly, as a person who was like seeing your social posts, I found it really like it was great from my perspective, because like, okay, I know what's going on with you. Like, I can kind of like, you were both emotional and like straightforward about what you were dealing with. It was kind of like, okay, great, I don't have to ask you about this. Like, I just now know where you're at, and like I can just see you, we can like work together, we can hang out, and I don't have to just be like, so the appointment of the blah blah, you know, like we can just talk about it. Like, how are you feeling, what's going on, you know?
Exactly.
Well, I think we've been talking for like 3 hours.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So I think we should wrap it up.
I feel like we just scratched the surface on like a lot of it. You know, there's so many other experiences. There's just so much in the like testing and treatment portion that it's like too much to even like talk about.
But we'll use this entire series to explore it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we should end on that note.
Yeah.
All right, guys.